Welcome, everyone, back to another BOLDcast One Piece podcast. I'm Carson.
I'm Lindsay.
And we are discussing the Water 7 saga of One Piece from episodes 196 to 325. I don't know if G8 is a part of that. We probably won't spend too much time on it. Did we talk about G8 before? In the last podcast? I'm not sure.
For some reason, I feel like we did talk about G8.
I think we did.
I think we
okay,
did
so
talk
maybe
about
it would
G8.
be whatever after.
I think it's like
after
the
G8,
Foxy
which
thing.
would be like 20 something,
Yeah.
or early 200s, whatever. Long Ring, Long Land to the end of Ennies Lobby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did ask for questions on our Patreon this time, and there was a lot of questions. I think there was like over 100.
Mhm.
So if we don't get to yours, or some people asked like very similar questions to other people, so we don't get to yours, I'm sorry, but there was a lot, and we'll see what happens in the podcast.
Mhm.
But I was gonna start it off. We had a question from Crouton King, and it was, which arc within the Water 7 saga do you like the most? Long Ring, Long Land, Water 7, Ennies Lobby, and post Ennies Lobby, and why?
Favorite arc?
Yeah.
Probably Water 7. I think Water 7. Well, I'm not sure. What do you think?
For me, it's interesting because up until like the post Ennies Lobby, I definitely would have said like Water 7 was like my favorite of most of One Piece so far, other than probably like Chopper's arc. Like that it was very strong. I loved the mystery, I loved the reveals, I loved just everything about it. The whole like place was really cool as well. But also post Ennies Lobby with Garp and everything, I feel like just the feeling and like the vibe of that little part of the story was so good. Like it just felt like, oh, we're just like hanging out in One Piece, and it just felt like kind of comforting and nostalgic, and but also exciting and new, you know. So for me, it's close. I'd still say that Water 7 is better because I think like the story and the way it was crafted, and just the way that things were built up, everything with the Mary, all of that stuff, I feel like was really well done. And I also feel like the pacing that the anime was doing was like also matching the story. Like I didn't feel like, oh, this would have been so good if they didn't spend so much time, adapting it. It felt like very well matched, and I felt very invested the whole time. But I feel like it is a close second with post Ennies Lobby, because I also just loved Garp in the anime. That was so fun.
Yeah.
And I loved just hanging out. Like just hanging out is like some of my favorite parts of One Piece. Yeah. And
I think so too. I think I probably would have said the same thing. I think Water 7 with all the stuff with the Mary and Usopp was probably a highlight for me of the whole thing. I think Usopp's struggle within the crew, like that's something that I was calling for like a long time. I think of One Piece fans kind of, it can, well, not even just One Piece fans. I think anybody who gets into the, like, whether you're a diehard One Piece fan, just who I was referring to, or anybody who watches the show or who's into the series, you can kind of take for granted pretty easily. And this goes for other long running series too, but you take for granted pretty easily, like, oh, you're not even halfway through. It's like, okay, but I'm 300 episodes into a show. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it wasn't that far at this point, but my point is, getting that far in without having like a real test, to the structure of the team, and like a real obstacle emotionally, it's a long time before that. And you could say I guess you could count the stuff with Nami, as a smaller sort of version of that. But it was, the Water 7 Ennies Lobby and this whole saga what really set it apart for me was just like what felt like real stakes. Like, you know, stakes don't have to be about people dying necessarily. You have to, it doesn't have to be not everything has to be Game of Thrones. It's but it's lasting sort of scars on relationships. That was something that or some sort of real threat to the status quo, and something that could affect serious and lasting change is something that I think the story really needed and had gone a long time. You know, you could compare like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood was 64 episodes long, and that's a full story where people are like losing limbs and getting limbs, and, you know, losing lives and getting lives, and, you know, craziness, and that's a whole contained story. So like, to go that many hours into a series without that felt I mean, it didn't actually feel that weird. It's just when you think about it is what I'm saying. It feels like a long time, but once you kind of get there, and now that we're here, and I guess it's just seeing that with Usopp, like it felt, you know, I there's always this knowledge that everything's gonna be okay. You know, like I know I've seen character designs of Usopp later. I knew Usopp was not gonna actually just be gone from the story. So intellectually I knew that, but like trying to focus on just the story, what they were saying, the whole dilemma, Luffy's hard decisions that he had to make as a captain. Like I really respected that, and like respected the sort of the stakes of that sort of conflict, even if I felt like, you know, Usopp suddenly being super badass against Luffy but not being able to take down the Frankie family was a bit like, you know, I guess you could say convenient. It was still a big moment, which is the point. So,
and
you know,
the whole, you know, the point of showing that, whether or not maybe it was like a little bit unrealistic of just like how crazy of a power up, but the whole thing was to show that, you know, they know each other very well, and Usopp has spent a lot of time with Luffy and really knows him, and then that's what like allows him to have.
Yeah,
that
it's
edge.
a conceptual thing. It's not about the logistics of battle, which is kind of, you know, you can say that for all of One Piece, and that's one of its strengths, is it doesn't hold itself to that kind of a standard. So, or like not standard of quality, but like a standard of I guess like
formatting
and like battle strategy, you know, like that's not the point of it. That's never been the point of it. It's never tried to be the point of it. So when Usopp, you know, goes all out against Luffy and it's like a big set piece, you know, you could think about it in a really sort of black and white way, and I do, but, you know, you think about it like that and then consider the show you're watching and then sort of reorient yourself in that, and that's kind of how you have to think of that. But overall, I think, yeah, that the part with Usopp and that whole little thing, and how, especially how it concluded, I think there's some questions about that, really sort of worked for me, you know, because there's like, I talk all the time, I'm constantly making predictions, and everyone's like, oh, you always, you know, think the worst. It's like, I think the worst with everything, because usually it's like you know, it just ends up being like the easiest, not in One Piece. I think I do this with every show. It's like, it's not often that you actually get like the most satisfying conclusion. You usually get like the easiest conclusion, where it is just like what I thought was going to happen of, oh, Usopp, what are you doing? Come on. And it's like a reflection of the previous thing. It has this kind of poetry to it, that it's kind of repeating the past and stuff. But it, you know, surpassed my expectations, and I was happy with how it actually turned out, because it was really good, and, you know, I wasn't expecting that. So that would be my whole thing. So Crouton King's question, Water 7, or like that, specifically the part having to do with Usopp and the Mary and stuff, or post Ennies Lobby, if we're considering that like its own separate arc.
Yeah, I think that, like, for me, I think that I don't think that Ennies Lobby was like bad at all. I just think like in comparison to Water 7, I feel like it doesn't quite hold up as much. And obviously Long Ring Long Land is I think it was a good place to like start the story, but I don't think you can really compare it of like, oh, Long Ring Long Land, my favorite. I loved when that mole showed up.
Long Ring Long Land is, I mean, I'm sure it's been talked to death, and we talked about it to death, I think, like earlier on in the saga. It feels like it was so long ago, and we took extra long to get through through this saga as well. But like Long Ring Longland concept, like again, it's like in concept, like, and when in the setup about it being like this long thing, and it introduces sort of the concept of the motion of the ocean in a way that like comes into effect later. Is sort of this building concept that grows in One Piece, and like the idea of everything's long there, it just, and then it like, you know, it just wasn't utilized at all pretty much in the Foxy, you know, Davy back fight. Like and speaking, like, the reason why I wanted to include G8 in this, because we talked about it. We actually talked about it in the Oh no, we didn't talk about it in the last podcast. This is why, is because in the last podcast they were like, what, there was a question that was like, what do you want to see next? Like, what's your what is the next arc you would want to see? Or like, you know, what would you want to explore next? And then I was like, something with, you know, like emotional resonance or some kind of test to the group or whatever. But I could see ourselves getting into like a fillery kind of feeling arc between, to like kind of be a buffer between this big arc of Alabasta, or not Alabasta, Skypiea. Yeah, Skypiea is what I mean to say. In the Skypiea podcast. Between Skypiea and whatever big arc comes next. And then we hit G8, and I was like, this is exactly like, this is perfect, like, for this kind of thing. And then so G8 filled that role, and then we had the actual canon version of that kind of thing with Long Ring Longland, you know, with and we met Aokiji as well, which is an important canon thing. But Aokiji was also foreshadowed at the end of G8 as well. That he was mentioned by name. I just think G8 is still one of my favorites. It feels cheap to say that it's my favorite, and I'll say the arc was not one of my favorites. That there's still that one episode that I remember as like my favorite episode of One Piece still, just because it's the best episode of anime. It's like so good and feels very One Piece, even if it's filler. But we had that, it like satisfied that sort of buffer kind of arc. And then we had Long Ring Longland, and by comparison, Long Ring Longland, or at least a large part of it, feels more fillery than G8. And then we moved on to Water 7, where like we get back into like the real story. So we had kind of dual fillery stories in a way.
It's interesting though, because like, you know, you could just say, oh, what, like, you know, you could just cut Long Ring Longland and put G8 in there, and then maybe it would be like a more entertaining story. But at the same time, I do feel like some of the stuff that happened in Long Ring Longland was like setting up for kind of the themes and the ideas of like, you know, people getting stolen off the crew and then having to like fight to get them back.
That's true.
With the Davy back fight. And then, also the tides of like, oh, suddenly the water goes down from here. And that's probably like Aqua Laguna, like almost the, like, you know, tidal wave kind of thing that's like coming. So then everywhere else has less water compared to there where there's more water and stuff.
Yeah.
So I feel like it did set up some good stuff. And I did like the look of some of the long animals, but I do also wish that we got more of like long things, long stuff.
Yeah,
like I wish that the setting was kind of cool, and I kind of wish that it got utilized.
It was
like,
underutilized. I think that's the main
more.
point, is that like it felt underutilized because it was such a cool thing. But they also, like, part of what makes it feel underutilized is that Aokiji actually didn't save random people. He like created the bridge between different islands on Long Ring Longland. So he kind of like reconnected everybody, and then that at least as far as I know, I read this in a Patreon comment like fucking months ago at this point, but something like that. I think that it connected, and that to me was like, oh my god, that's genius, and makes it feel like that's the problem with adaptations. And One Piece so far has been a lot better at stuff like that, or in places, than I feel like, as far as like filler as a concept. I've enjoyed One Piece's take on it than I did with early Naruto or like early Shippuden, because that's kind of where we are, I think, at this point. freaking cat. Get out of here. I'm talking about Long Ring Long Land. No.
No, let him.
No. He needs to get off. I'm talking.
Oh, boy.
What was I saying? Anyway, whatever. I don't need to go on a Naruto rant. It's just that, I really appreciated, or I really didn't appreciate, and have the parts that I have not appreciated about the filler aspects of One Piece is, the approach to, like, their small canon tidbits, or like the cover stories not being adapted in a lot of places, apparently, like the fact that we need to go like read those. I feel like as far as being a complete thing, there's no especially with the relatively small amount of filler episodes. There's a lot of padding and filler in like canon episodes that like make things drawn out and long. But like as far as filler episodes, they make up all these like random side stories, which are, hit or miss, or mostly pretty good actually in comparison to other shows. But like, there's so much canon stuff to adapt, and then they just skip over that. That's kind of a case with the Aokiji thing, where so much Long Ring Long Land felt so disconnected, and then we go to Water 7 afterwards, like, with some interim, travel time and meeting Aokiji. But with Aokiji just saving, or just like transporting a bunch of random individuals rather than being connected to the Long Ring Long Land story, that completely changes the sort of connective tissue between Long Ring Long Land and the rest of the story. That Aokiji was the piece that connected it. So to remove him means that there's like some stuff at the start that makes it feel like the One Piece world, and then the whole Davy Back fight, which was extended by filler. So like start of it feels connected, and then that's it. But if there's that piece at the end of Aokiji, doing
then
that really like keeps the flow and keeps everything feeling connected. So it's a very small change, but when I read that comment, I was just like, oh my god,
that would have tied it together.
It would have, like, it's literally just such a small thing, but the network of effect that has on how much everything feels connected changes it drastically. And it's the kind of thing that, shows why Oda's a good writer, is because he's the kind of guy who knows the impact of a detail like that. That's why he would put something like that in the manga. And then it's funny because we see the impact of such a small change that Oda knew to include, maybe subconsciously, maybe it wasn't a big deal to him, but he still knew that there needed to be something there to like connect this, or to like, there's an opportunity to introduce this big character in a substantive way to this side story, So it's important, and Oda knows it's important. And then there's other people who are running the anime production, or who aren't a legendary mangaka, who that's like, what I'm saying is that's the difference between like a genius writer and like a production, script writer person, or like, an adaptation type thing. That's how subtle those differences can be. And those are the kind of things that like build up to something feeling greater than the sum of its parts. And, it's such a small thing. And I might have even misremembered what the comment said, and this rant just means nothing.
No,
but
I feel like I remember you showing me that, or me seeing that comment about that. It was something similar to that, at the very least. And you're like, Oda's a genius.
Based on
something
that
not true.
Doesn't exist.
That would be so funny. The One Piece fans are just like, we're done.
It's just like, all right, you're on the right track, but like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, I guess that's it. That's probably good for that question. What even was the question? I remember.
It was, what was our favorite out of the things.
So, but yeah, so I guess it just, when we talked about every arc, I guess we could talk about Ennies Lobby with that. Ennies Lobby feels like it was a way better manga arc than what we got. I feel like it was very good. It was like, if you compare it to all the rest of the arcs that we've seen, it was one of the best for sure. But I'm not watching One Piece 20 years ago. I'm watching it in 2024. So like, it's a totally different experience. And it's also like my 200th anime or something, or like more than that maybe. It's not my like 5th anime or my 2nd anime that I've been following for so long. It's a completely different watching experience than what we're doing, and that's part of what our channel is about, is that we're watching it not from the perspective of everybody else who's watching One Piece. A lot of people, even reactors, get into it as like one of their first, 20 series, 30 series that they do. We're a little bit further in than that. And so it's a completely different watching experience. So I didn't expect it to like blow me away. Everyone expected it expected Ennies Lobby to blow our fucking minds. And maybe it's also because we watch things episode to episode, which is not what I think normal people do. Like, most people don't watch episode by episode. They watch like 5 episode chunks. That's what you remember. Like, one episode is not an episode. It's like a piece of a 5 episode or 10 episode chunk. We watch things episode by episode and talk about things detailed, each scene by scene. And often that results in a lot of nitpickiness because the adaptation has its flaws. But even with all of those things, it's, the moments are clearly like huge resonant moments. Like, everybody who got their transformations and all their shit, the Nami Khalifa fight, it just, like, everyone, you can come up with as many justifications as you want. Like, they were the CP9 was so threatening and so overpowered, and then it just felt like they fell off a cliff as soon as we got to Ennies Lobby. It just...
Well, not even as soon as we got there. Like, after we'd been there for a bit. Because, like, still the fight with Luffy and Blue Note...
It happened... Oh,
was really, really good.
That was a highlight for me. Yeah, and that's the thing, is, like, if you take the whole arc, I'd say it didn't reach the fucking, like, and by the way, by saying like not reaching the expectations, I'm saying like it didn't it's not like people build it up like it's the fucking crazy thing, and you actually didn't know anything about this. I didn't know the name. I don't know the names of the arcs. I don't know anything like that, but I knew around this time is when we would get like the Namek, I guess not pain arc, but like I don't know what the comparison would be there, but like the Namek type saga. I had heard like maybe Ennies Lobby or something at some point. Like, I had heard Skypiea, for example, but I didn't know it was referring to like a sky island. I had heard like Ennies Lobby or something, like there's an arc in this kind of area that was like the big arc. So like I know, and I knew while we were getting into it, I'm like, okay, this is probably like, you can kind of feel it. And just the way that the comments talk about it, it's like, this was so explosive and insane to everybody. To me, it was very good, but it was a lot of moments that didn't reach the potential that they could have. And some moments that completely took me by surprise and were awesome and were above my expectations. But, outside of the concept of the arc, it was the Diable Jambe, or however you say it. That was like, I did not expect that. I didn't know about that. I didn't fucking think about that. It came out of nowhere and it was so sick. Same with Gear 3. Did not expect it to be that awesome and different than Gear 2. That's what blew me away. I'm just like, I didn't expect him to turn into a Titan, basically. Like, he's blowing like air into his bones, I guess, or, it's a different thing. But like, he bites his finger or like puts his finger in his teeth. And then a giant hand explodes out of the side of a building. So it's like, I didn't expect that. And, that blew me away. That was insane. Chopper getting giant is one of those things that I didn't know about. But, if you think about his Rumble Ball abilities and all that shit, all of them coming in together and being the same thing, so there's pieces of it that exceed my expectations. But if I think about the whole arc, it's those moments, and if you think about, like, for anybody else out there, like, this is how I feel about Namek as well. This is how I feel about like all of Dragon Ball, which is super formative for me. Like, that was my, I think to One Piece, that Dragon Ball was my thing like that. I didn't even watch Naruto that as much back in the day. But like, I think about Namek and I think about Super Saiyan Goku versus Frieza. I think about Goku arriving on Namek. I think about some moments with Vegeta, like stealing the Dragon Balls, or like a couple things. Like I don't think about the 50 other fights that happened in that arc. I don't think about all of the individual fights with each individual character against Frieza's different of his like 4 or 5 forms. I don't think about all that. I think about like the few keystone moments. I don't think about all the connective tissue in Namek. I don't think about whatever. There's a lot there. It's a whole arc there. If you measure the whole arc, it's like a lot of people's expectations about the things that happen are based on the moments. And that's kind of what it feels like here is it's like the arc of Ennies Lobby, big moments tied together by, at least in the anime, kind of a weaker connective tissue.
But at the same time, I feel like...
Which is, you could say that for everything. I'm not saying that's wrong. But from perspective of somebody who's not watching it 20 years ago, who doesn't have the nostalgic attachment, it wasn't it was like, it hit about at 80% about as much as I expected. And there were some moments that exceeded my expectation. So it was very good. But I don't, that's why we didn't have the reaction that I think a lot of people wanted us to at some moments, because we weren't in the same headspace as a lot of other people. Mm-hmm. But anyway, sorry.
I think also, like, for me, I definitely did there were some issues with Ennies Lobby, like you were saying, but at the same time, I think that the highs were so much higher and actually hit for me in this arc, unlike something like Skypiea, where I feel like there was a lot of things that I didn't like, and then the things that I did like weren't like, it wasn't like, oh, here's some things that I don't like, and then here's some things that I really liked, so it kind of like evens out to still be really good. For Skypiea, it was like, there's a lot of things that I don't like and a lot of things that I are okay and I kind of like. But for me in Ennies Lobby, it was like the things that were good were so good that I think that I will look back on that arc. So like, compared to Water 7, I'm like, I loved Water 7 and Ennies Lobby was really good.
Yeah.
Is my thing. So I'm like, I think that, especially like looking back and just how much the crew, like looking back, I think what I'll remember from this arc are, some character development, which is big. There was a couple questions about that, which we can get to later. And just how much the crew really solidified from this and how much it brought them together. And we said goodbye to Mary, and it was, you know what I mean? Like, it was a very... I think it is, probably a kind of a turning point in the story, or like we are at a new level, and we're working towards now the new goal of, going towards the new world, and, getting on like the other half of the globe, basically.
Yeah. Shinsekai.
Because first it's like, we're going to the Grand Line, and like that's the goal, and then it's like, okay, we're in the Grand Line, we're going after the One Piece, but that's such a far away thing. So to now kind of like bring it back a little bit and like, okay, we're still going after the One Piece, but first there's this closer goal that's still really big of getting into the new world, and like that is like the closer but still like huge thing of like, it's like the Grand Line of like, okay, we're going to the Grand Line. It's like, oh my god,
yeah,
that's crazy. But it's soon. But it's still a big goal, and it's going to be a huge achievement when we get there.
And so then it was, It felt like we were on a different planet almost.
Yeah.
At
so I feel like having, going through this whole experience with the crew of like, Robin getting stolen, and then, Usopp leaving, and then gaining Frankie, and having everyone all back together at the end, I feel like is a huge, and with the new ship and everything, I feel like is such a huge, just like as the whole like saga as a whole is like such a huge turning point and such a huge change, that I feel like, especially like the farther we get away from it, the more I'm going to be nostalgic about it, and the more I'm going to like reflect on how much this arc set up or changed or impacts things later on.
Yeah, I think so too. I think like that's the we have to wait for the test of time. Like, for example, it's been a long time since Skypiea, and I feel like Skypiea in hindsight is even worse than it was when we were watching. We were watching it like it was a kind of a struggle at times to find things to like. And but you did, because they were there in front of you. Like, you just temper your expectations, and then you just you like stuff. But like, looking back, I'm just like, how much dead time was there? Just like, I just wasn't enjoying it, like when I think back on it, like, I'm in the moment I was enjoying it, or at times I wasn't. At times I was just kind of coasting by. There were times, like, there were plenty of times where we just kind of zoned out for like episodes and episodes. But for this one, I can say, like, I don't think there was really a period like that where we were like...
there's times where I was disappointed by something,
Yeah.
but there wasn't times where I was just bored.
Yeah,
I was never
exactly.
like, oh, I wish... Like, sometimes I'd be like, oh, I wish that they, like, didn't, like, add this in, because it, like, clearly probably in the manga it was very, like, snappy, and then there was, like, a couple of jokes,
Yeah.
and then a big finish. But then, sometimes maybe the jokes went on a bit too long, but it didn't have that feeling that has happened in Skypiea, and also at other points in One Piece, where it was like, oh, and then we're fighting this random enemy, and then we're fighting this random enemy, and then we're fighting this random enemy. It felt like things were always building, and they were always heading in a direction. Sometimes it slowed down a little bit, but I was still in it, and I was still like, I could see where we're going, you know, and I was excited for it, and I didn't feel like, oh, I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm not that excited because I can't see where this is going to end up, or like, oh, I can see where it's going to end up. I wish we could just cut to there. It wasn't like that at all. I felt like I wanted to see every part of the story play out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually a huge difference that I wasn't really thinking about. But yeah, plenty of times where I'm just like, okay, and with this shit again, here we are waiting for this bullshit loser enemy to just get killed or knocked out and retire, and then we just move on and get back to what's really happening. Okay, let's just start the clock for like 3 episodes while we just wait for nothing to happen, and then we get back to what we're actually here for. Freaking cats fighting over there.
Raiden! He's kicking his sister out of her spot. She was sleeping there. Look at him.
You guys can't see, it's just off camera.
He's just off camera. She was sleeping and napping, and then he came up, attacked her, kicked her off, and now he's sat down there.
There will be a lot of cat-based interruptions probably throughout this. Anyway, so there was some of that, but there was a lot less because they took the time before all the fights, not just with the core, like they did with the core CP9 members, and then they got back to Ennies Lobby, and then we got introduced to the other CP9 members. And like, even the dude on the train who hadn't mastered the 6 style,
weasel guy or something?
Itachi.
Yeah.
They even built him up a little bit before, like, with time between. Multiple times they mentioned him beforehand. And that's a big step, that separates this saga from previous One Piece, where, like, the gag here, like, there's more build up to things, like, and even if it is just a gag here, like, the one that everyone hated that I actually didn't hate as much was Wan's,
the ramen guy.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought
everyone hated him, but like, I didn't like him. What I liked was how it changed the power scaling with Sanji and gave us an opportunity.
It gave us something that we'll probably never see again, which is Sanji using knives,
going ultra
on
instinct.
An enemy.
Yeah, he got to be like without literally tying his hands behind his back, like how powerful Sanji could be. That's a big moment. It's
also cool, because I did see. Maybe I'll try to find it quickly. Just because we just kind of been going and we haven't looked at any questions in a while, but I know that there is a comment. Christopher asked, what are your guys' thoughts on Sanji's moral code to not attack women? And although this is a gag, do you believe it adds to his character in terms of being chivalrous, or are you leaning towards this certain character trait that Oda is sticking with? And I think that's interesting, just because we're talking about the fight with that ramen guy where Sanji gets to go all out and he uses knives, which he doesn't normally, but because that guy is like a food item, then he lets himself. And so he's like, that's like a spot where we see him kind of like breaking his normal fighting style and his normal code of like, oh, I won't use knives because it's for the kitchen. But then later on we see the Khalifa fight where he doesn't want to fight her because she's a woman,
Yeah.
And I do like that. I like that Sanji's character, like sometimes it's a funny gag of like, oh, I'm not gonna fight women and stuff. And it is kind of funny and it is played as a joke, but I do like that his character, does kind of stick to his own like code or whatever, like Sanji is consistent, and I think that that's also what makes filler with Sanji always really good, because they're like, he's a chef, and we're gonna talk about his dreams of being a chef and going to the All Blue, and it just always hits every time, and I think it's just because he has moments, and I feel like normally in an anime I would not like the type of character archetype that he is, of like the I'm so obsessed with women and I just like drool all over the place when any woman, even the same woman.
That's not true, because you always like that character. Actually, you love Leorio and you love Joseph Joestar and others. Like, you think that, but you always like that guy. Who's that Naruto? Lee.
Oh.
Like, you always like that guy. He also kicks.
Yeah.
You always love that guy.
Okay, I guess I love that guy.
You always think that you don't like that guy.
Okay, well, here's the thing. I remember I don't like it when it's like the only thing about them. And I think like that's also like Lee is like just a really endearing guy, and he's a really great guy, and he's just so sweet and so nice and so dedicated.
Yeah.
And I think like Sanji is kind of similar in that, because I remember when we were watching the live action and Sanji was like coming up a little bit of a womanizer kind of guy, and I was like, oh boy, I hope this doesn't just get annoying in the anime. And I feel like it does a good job of like being a lot, but he still is enough of a character outside of that it doesn't just feel like, can this guy fucking leave?
Yeah.
Like I was worried before we started of just like, am I just gonna get annoyed by the literal same gag being on screen every time? And it happens all the time. He's like constantly like hard eyes and like,
Nami swore.
Yeah, but it's actually genuinely funny. And when he's not in that mode, he's like a badass.
Yeah.
And I think with the Khalifa fight, he was like, sometimes he was being like just totally bamboozled, and sometimes he was like, no, I'm not fighting you because I'm not gonna hit a woman.
No, as far as like the hitting women thing, like, is that a good like character thing, or is it just like, I think the question is like, they said, because I read this question before, they said like or is this a character trait, or is this just something Oda's going with? I think what they mean by that is something we talk about where it's just like with CP9 feeling, at least, everyone disagrees. In my opinion, CP9 felt very nerfed once we actually got to fight them, because they were set up like they can kill people with a finger. That this is kind of what the question is talking about with Sanji. Like, is it a character thing, or is it just a sort of quasi-artificial nerf to his character because he's really strong? He's one of the strongest in the group. Like, just to make him be able to interact in the story, not like, because it feels sometimes like our entire group is just a bunch of Saitamas. We're a bunch of One Punch Man characters who are just like way beyond the challenge constantly, and then it feels kind of dumb when we don't immediately just destroy everything. But with this case of like the hitting women thing, I think that's a perfectly reasonable character trait. I don't think that that's like I don't think that counts as like a I didn't scale it properly, now I have to nerf the situation so that it feels like there's a tension to it. Like, it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't. It's because it's not that. It's just like you said, a consistent character trait, and it's a flaw, but it's also what makes him endearing. It's a kind of like a fatal flaw type thing. Yeah. And a lot of good characters have something like that. That's one of the marks of like a really well-written characters. They have a blind spot. They have something that, because of their moral code or their training or something, they have this sort of kryptonite, this blind spot that's not literally kryptonite. That's not literally just a rock that just is untethered from their personality at all. Just, has, or their, character archetype or their character arc is just this rock that when they get close to it, they become weak and vulnerable. Like, when it's something that has to do with their personality, with their vibe, with their morals or their principles, And that is the thing that kind of can undo them, but also the thing that gives them strength. That's like a really good thing to have for any character. So I like that a lot. And that, it's the same thing like with the fact that he doesn't fight with his hands. And then we see him fight with his hands. It's the exact same thing. So we see him fight with his hands. We see him like take the gloves off, so to speak, because he gets the opportunity to within, it's like a loophole in his moral code to be able to do that. And then what do you see? What do you know? He's like 10 times more badass. And it's the same shit.
But because he's so strong on his fighting, like on his decisions about how he is going to fight and how he is going to use his body, that he's only going to kick, I feel like it doesn't feel like, okay, we saw the ramen guy fight and now every time Sanji fights I'm pissed off because he's not whipping out knives and being better than Zoro with a sword.
I feel like you could, like, if you wanted to, you could see it that way, but like the point of all of this is that it's characters. Yeah, that's why it doesn't feel like bullshit, because it doesn't feel like a gun he never fires. Like, like it is, but he doesn't fire it because of very well-defined. There's like a clear barrier. There's clear, and they set it up well in advance to that, hundreds of episodes prior, that why he doesn't use that. Yeah. And he never has since, and he never did before. And it makes,
And he probably won't in the future unless someone has the fucking broccoli fruit over here.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's what makes a good character. It's the opposite. So like, yeah, as far as the question, it's not just something he's going with. It's not some weird writing device to keep everything balanced. It's a character decision first, rather than, it's a character decision because I need it to be a character decision so that I can, write myself out of a corner or something. Yeah. Yeah. So love Sanji. Mm-hmm. Always has the best fillers.
Always has the best fillers. Cannot be understated.
Can't be beaten.
I did want to ask this question because this was an interesting question. Before we get too far away from just like Ennies Lobby as a whole, Claire Voyage, the MVP, who's always sending us where to start on the episode. But it was, since you initially expected the attack on Ennies Lobby to potentially be a major failure for the Straw Hats in the style of a darker shonen deconstruction such as Hunter x Hunter, how do you feel about the clear victory we got instead?
How do you feel about that? Because that was mostly my prediction.
Yeah, I think that it could. It's interesting because I think that if I didn't know how long the show was, then. Like, if it was something like, say the total length was 400 episodes, then I might have been a little bit disappointed that, that we're not getting that, like, big thing. But at the same time, within the vibe of One Piece and the way that things have gone and the way that things are going, I feel like it fits really well. That we get this victory, but it wasn't a total. Mary did die in this thing. You know what I mean? So we still got these crazy emotional moments. We had the moment of Usopp leaving. We had, Robin going through all of her stuff, and then we had having to lose the Mary. And I feel like it did get darker. And previously, like, we complain about Pell all the time, how he somehow survived a nuclear explosion. So I feel like in a way, the arc did go a little bit darker than some of the other arcs. At least in a way, like, I felt very, I got emotional a lot more in this arc than I have in previous arcs. But I think it could have gone the other way. But I think, like, maybe that's just not the style of One Piece, or maybe at least that's just not the style of One Piece yet, because there's still so much more, and maybe we will have that, like, darkest moment of failure, and potentially even with Blackbeard having his whole ability is to, like, swallow things up.
That's
and
what
destroy
I think is going to
them.
be next. Yeah.
So seeing that, it's like, oh, that is like despair. Like, he has the power of darkness, and it's like we're in the never-ending story here, and we're getting eaten. Everything's getting eaten away.
I thought that what was going to happen next probably is going to happen next. I don't know. Like, all the stuff they're setting up with Blackbeard and him, like, really coming to a head, that I feel like is is what I thought would happen. It would coincide with the end of this arc. That's what I thought. It seems like it's going to happen in the following area. So, yeah, I don't know. So the fact that it was a win, like it was a win, but like at what cost? Like it was a win in a way that I can accept. It was like,
it didn't feel like just like, oh, we won.
Especially with the post Ennies Lobby and I'm talking to Garp and the fact that Garp couldn't even override the like, oh, he's my grandson, so I don't give a shit. And then they were like, that doesn't work. You need to fight. And then it was a fun, like them. It's hard because like it wasn't a big difficult fight, like a moment. It was more like, oh, we'll get you kids. And then they're like, and more of a set piece for Usopp to come out. It was its own kind of moment. It wasn't a serious like fight or battle. But with the whole explanation with getting the kind of lore drop and seeing how this whole situation fits into the grander story, I'm more okay with it than I would be if like Ennies Lobby just ended the way it did. No post Ennies Lobby.
And then we just sail off and do something else.
Yeah, the fact that we can see the reverberations of it, that it feels like there was some, at least, as even if it wasn't as devastating of a thing, I feel like it was built up a little bit much as far as their impact here. But we haven't seen the consequences yet.
And
it could
also
just be
at
a
the
little bit
same
more
time,
delayed.
we know that the world, because it was like, oh, are they just going to let this slide? But then we also find out that the world government right now is probably a lot more concerned. Like they're like, Ennies Lobby getting destroyed is pretty bad. But at the same time, Shanks and Whitebeard are out there doing God knows what, and they're terrified of that. So that is like, putting it into perspective of like, oh, why aren't they like focusing everything on this? They declared war on the government. It's like, okay, they declared war on the government, but there's still like a couple of guys on a boat.
Yeah.
And two of the biggest pirates of all time are out there potentially conspiring together.
Yes.
And that's what they're focused on.
Yeah. And also with the whole thing, it's kind of similar to Alabasta where
they don't want to admit that
that they failed because that's a huge hit to their morale.
Exactly.
So, it ended up making more sense, and I was very cynical going into all those explanations, but upon reflection, it feels like it fits. And the fact with all the Blackbeard stuff, it feels like something serious is coming. So I can accept the way that this ended. And with the Mary, I'm sure there's a lot of questions about the Mary, but I was of two minds, and I've landed on a more favorable version, but I was of two minds of it because I was thinking, I'm like, in the moment, it was very emotional. After it, I was like, okay, let's put our thinking caps on and think about this. Like, is it kind of a cop-out that the first death is somebody that we met this arc as a person? Like, okay, we finally had a death in One Piece, but it was a object that was given a personality right before it died. Like we didn't hear it talk.
It was always part of the
No,
crew.
I know, but like this is what I'm just going through it. Like if you think about it, it's like, okay, there are stakes. See, Mary died. It's like, okay, Mary was a boat that wasn't a person, as far as the story's concerned. It wasn't a character until like an actual character. Like we love Mary. I love Mary. But like as far just breaking it down, wasn't a character until like right before they died. So just like, see, I can kill characters. Look, here's a character over here. Like it's literally like that. So you could look at it that way. That's a cynical way of looking at it, and maybe there's some merit to that. But then I thought about it more, and I was like, is it that Oda created a character for him to kill for dramatic effect? Or is it he made that thing? Like, this is what I actually think. This is what I landed on. He was going to destroy the Mary already. So he gave it a voice and gave it a personality to elevate that experience. Not as like a,
I want to kill a person.
I want to have stakes. So I want to have stakes in my story and like real consequences. So I'm going to kill a character, but I don't want to kill a character. And I even brought back characters from a nuke that they were carrying. So like, he obviously is very, he doesn't like to kill his darlings in a way, but he did. In fact, he made it harder. Like he made it worse and more heart-wrenching, and more effective. And I imagine that probably wasn't easy for him to do, to like, because he built up the Mary as like a part of the crew before even having a voice. So making the Klabauterma, however you say it, you know, making the Mary have a actual soul, a spirit in it, wasn't a last minute. It was something that had kind of been. It was like, it's like a multiplier to it. It's already. It was already, the track was already laid. But it was like, how do we elevate this? How do we make it more devastating and more personal? You know. So that's what I landed on. It wasn't. Yeah. So I felt it in the moment. Then I took a step back and got more cynical. Then I thought about it more, and it's like I genuinely don't think that he was trying to like give himself an out, so to speak, in that moment. I think that it was a very clever way to handle that moment. It was to give it like give Mary like an actual voice. I think it was really good and very smart. Yeah. And great. So
poor Mary. I do Mary. Like the new boat though. It's quite
Thousand
cute
Sunny.
Well.
I wonder if Thousand Sunny will have a soul.
I don't know.
Or if it'll only get a soul when it's about to die. Like,
maybe it'll get a soul later on, because they love the Mary so much, and especially with Frankie on board to really take care of Thousand Sunny.
I hope, like, what would be really cool is if, like, Thousand Sunny becomes a crew. Like, you know, what happened with Mary is we only got to know Mary in the last moments. What if the same phenomenon happens? Oh, you know, maybe it'll take a long time. Maybe longer than the Mary.
But then Mary, it doesn't just die right away.
Yeah, it's like
we get to have that.
It gets to be like
somewhat sentient boat.
And we'll see like another shadow on the wall when they're talking or something like that. Like in the sunset when they were, the whole Usopp thing was happening. Yeah. You know, and in the ending or whatever, where it shows all the shadows and then it shows Mary's shadow, and it's like, oh. That would be cool if everyone was having like a crew meeting and everybody's like in the cabin of the Thousand Sunny, see that. And then you could see another shadow on the wall or something. That would be cool. Like, shit like that. I would love something like that. That would make it feel. It would make. I would like that just to have it, but also because it would make the thing with Mary seem less like an arc specific phenomenon. It would feel more like a, you know, like the Mary again. Like what Oda's really good at is like using these keystone moments where it feels like it's just this one-off thing, but then it turns out that that's actually a setup for like a wider phenomenon. Like, you know, it wasn't just something created just for the Mary's passing. It was created for the Mary's passing, but that sort of foreshadows as well, like a greater sort of force that's out there. So, and it would just be cool to see, you know, because we're adding crew members all the time. What if we just like had a crew member that was always there, but maybe not even spoken to or anything? Like, literally a shadow on the wall or some presence that we could feel.
What if Thousand Sunny just starts like flinging things around to make some music, and then that's actually the musician?
That would be cool.
Because Luffy's always like, I want a musician, and then the boat's like, all right.
Dude, is that like a Luffy always says that, and it's clear there's gonna be a musician, but it's like, yeah, I don't know. Is that like a crew member on most ships? Is somebody like always the bard?
Yeah.
Because Luffy, like, it feels like Luffy was just like, okay, I need somebody to fix my ship. Somebody to cook me food. And equally important, somebody who can play the guitar or whatever. Like, yeah. W.
Okay. Next up, we've got a question from Extra Crispy, who asked, when Robin first joined the crew, you talked about how you hoped the story and the characters in it would acknowledge her checkered past and her being a full-on villain during Alabasta. Now that we are done with Ennies Lobby, how do you feel about her being on the crew? And do you think the story has sufficiently justified it? If you think that her past actions are still unjustifiable, what do you think that says about the morality of the crew and the show itself?
Do you want to answer that first? Or do you want me to answer that first?
You can go first.
I saw this question, and I've been thinking about this obviously before the question, because this has been a big talking point for me for the whole show. And I don't know. I'm still unsure exactly of how I feel about it. But on the face of it, I'm very satisfied with how Robin's story has turned out, and how that's developed, and her big moment in Ennies Lobby and stuff. I feel like it was very good. It was very well done. I feel like she is, like, as far as her place in the crew, Robin herself as a character, I feel like I'm very satisfied with how it went. I'm very satisfied with how it tied into the greater mysteries of One Piece, how her relationship with Aokiji has developed, and how that is, and it really does recontextualize her past actions, learning about her backstory and everything. I think it fits really well, and I love it, and it's great. So yeah, that's how I feel about Robin. The morality aspect of it is still something that I don't know how to feel about exactly, and it's not because it's partly because, like, I watched Hunter x Hunter first, is because I think about, like, that's where the real question is. It's not really about Robin. It's about like Robin is an example of how difficult it can be to navigate, like, morality in a world where, or in a story where, fighting is like a huge component. Like, I'm wearing a Dungeon Master hat right now. Like, I've been DMing, and I've been thinking about this a lot when planning for sessions, and thinking about morality of characters and alignment and stuff. Like, in real life, killing a homeless person is unthinkable to me, and and is immediately immoral. It doesn't really matter who you're really killing. Like, in self-defense situations, things can get different, but, like, killing's never a good thing. But in a game or in a story, you take some moral, you don't think about it the same way. Like, if my character in D&D, or somebody's character in D&D, kills somebody in battle, that's just getting XP and finishing, or, like, defeat somebody in a fight. That's, like, it's a thing that is a part of a story. But, like, if you think about actually doing that, like, so that's real life to a game. It's like a completely different moral question. And I think about that in One Piece, but not to real life. I think about different stories and different approaches. So, like, when I mentioned Hunter x Hunter, it's not that I'm comparing One Piece to Hunter x Hunter exactly. It's that Hunter x Hunter has the same sort of question morally about, like,
if someone is nice to you even though they were terrible to other people.
That's what I'm getting at, is that, like, in Hunter x Hunter, it's like that's what that question and that sort of dilemma of normal people getting in the way, or this Randian exceptionalism type thing. Like, Hunter x Hunter in a way is about that kind of moral examination, like, when and that, from the beginning to the end. In the beginning, you don't know that it's like, when everybody's walking over the corpses of all these just people who were trying to follow their dreams, it's like, they don't question that they're seeing these horrible things, and we don't question it when we're seeing it. But as as more and more of the story happens, we're exposed to Gon's personality, and we find that it actually is something that's being considered not only by the characters, but by, like, the story at large is kind of centered around these kind of questions. And so, like, I think about, like, it kind of, Hunter x Hunter kind of changed the way that I think about stuff like that, about, like, the characters' effect on the world. I think about Jujutsu Kaisen as well. Every story has a different approach to, like, the common folk, and how that's treated morally for the sake of the characters. And as far as Robin is concerned, and people like Mr. 2 or other people, I'm not sure how much like the ship crashing in and mowing over hundreds of people as a consequence of Robin's, actions. She was helping Luffy, but she's also doing what it takes to not only survive, but to approach her goal because of her past traumas. And she wasn't strong enough just to do it all her own. She had to like use people and etc. And that's kind of like what a villain does, is they are not strong enough to take the moral stand that like a hero does, where they sacrifice some part of themselves, like some part of achieving your goals, or they make compromises for themselves in order to help other people or to do the right thing. That's like what a hero does. What a villain does is they do that, but they're compromising other people in favor of their own goal. And Robin is a reformed villain. And so as far as like her, that's why I separate like Robin as a character and her place in the crew versus this. Like, I feel like the whole conversation that I've been having around this is kind of unfair because I haven't been detailing my thought process properly in each individual reaction that I talk about this. And I know it's really confusing and all over the place, so I'm sorry about that, but I'm just trying to say it in like the broadest way without saying it wrong, but I'm failing anyway. Like, what I mean is, I'm not comparing Hunter x Hunter to One Piece in the way that Hunter x Hunter took it upon itself to tackle these kind of moral questions about the main character's place in a broader world with people who are living and working and just trying to do what they can to survive and whatever. Like, that whole kind of question, that kind of moral discussion is in a big way what Hunter x Hunter is about. One Piece, that's not what One Piece is about. Robin is although she's, on the right side of history, you could say, because she's like on our team now, she aided and abetted like this tyrannical situation that was terrible for people. Thousands of people died because of the actions of Robin. And the thing is, One Piece isn't about discussing all of that. Nami doesn't question that, and it's not because her character wouldn't. It's because that's not what the story's about.
It's not the main focus. It's still like...
So it happened, and maybe there's a place for... In fact, I definitely think there's a place in a different interpretation of One Piece, or a different way that One Piece was written, where we would dive into those sorts of things, and maybe we will going forward as the series evolves. I don't know what this future holds. But my sort of sticking point with this whole thing with Robin was, again, not that Hunter x Hunter talked about this stuff and One Piece is failing to do what Hunter x Hunter did. That's not the point. One Piece is a different story. It's written by a different person. It's tackling different things. But like, what I'm trying to point out is just that we aren't discussing that, not because of some sort of like, moral stance or moral perspective I think that Luffy and the Straw Hats have. It's not like they're like Gon, where Gon always, like, there's always these moments where like Gon is talking about like, oh yeah, they're, I didn't hate them because they were killing all these people. I hate them because they went back on their friends. It's like Luffy isn't talking about that because I think Luffy has some sort of weird twisted morality that's going to like come to light eventually and like change the way we think about the story. Luffy's not talking about that because that's not the point of the show. So I guess I'm just saying that it's something that I notice maybe other people aren't concerned with, and that's okay because that's not what One Piece is about. But I think about that all the time. I think about like what... And this is now about my personal thoughts. It's not about like a judgment on One Piece. That's kind of what all of this is about, this sort of morality discussion. It's not about One Piece necessarily. It's about how I think about, as a viewer and as somebody who's like an aspiring creator, how I think about heroes and villains and what that means, because the heroes and villains exist I'm trying to find the right word, like in relation to a world that they're either protecting or taking advantage of. You know, that's the opportunity to be heroic can only be if there's something at stake or something to protect or whatever. So I separate this thing that I always talk about with the morality. That's about me. That's not actually about One Piece. However, I think it's interesting to look at that type of a discussion in One Piece. But I do separate it from what we got in this arc with Robin. Not entirely. It's still connected, but like, with Robin and her whole moment, I just want to say, to cap it off, I think, I'm satisfied with how Robin has been integrated. I think that the little bit that we did discuss that in her backstory and like the flashback of her, or like the sort of montage of her growing up and like seeing that she's fucking people over and all this kind of stuff, but she's also just kind of doing what
she like wasn't and then got accused of it anyway.
blamed for it, something that she didn't do. I can, and there's a development there. Like we see her as a kid, like trying to do the right thing and that she doesn't want to steal or she doesn't want to do this or that. But as she grows up, she gets more comfortable with it because she has to, because it's what she has to do to survive. If she's going to get
accused of it anyway, it's like,
And then we think back to where she was in Alabasta, where she was much more ruthless, but she was still helping Luffy. She still undermined Crocodile at points, but she was still like, I will always remember Robin also contributed to the drought, contributed to the deaths of thousands off screen, that the story is just kind of, not really. It's not really doing that. But it's doing but it's just, we're not, the characters are reflecting on that. Like, hey, Robin, I forgive you for doing all that. I know you're just trying to do the right thing. And then she like, maybe we'll get to that. It feels like that's kind of buttoned up, but I can get into all that shit and everyone's just going to disagree with me. So I'll cap it off. Robin is good. I love Robin. I like that she's a part of the crew. I like the way that they examined it in the ways that they did. I feel like they could have done a little bit more as far as the shit that I was talking about. But again, that's my personal thing with stories in general, not necessarily just with One Piece. So, and I don't fault the story for not doing things the way that I want to all the time.
Yeah, especially just given the like we've talked about many times, like the tone and the the overall kind of story of One Piece is like Robin having the potential to be a really good person is more important than having have been a bad person in the past.
That's right.
And it's not like in Hunter x Hunter where it's like, this person is still a very bad and very terrible person, but we're going to like them because they help me.
Yeah.
It's not like that. It's like if Robin right now went and, orchestrated a thing that killed thousands of people, they'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You can't just do that.
Yeah.
But it's in the past, and as long as you keep looking forward, we don't need to dwell on the past because you're with us and you're going in the right direction. It's
but that's what Claire Voyage kind of mentioned with or was it Claire Voyage or was it Extra Crispy? You asked the last questions. I forget. About like the whole deconstruction thing, like I was talking about. That's what Hunter x Hunter is it takes that, like, that's why it's unfair for me to compare Hunter x Hunter, which is a deconstruction, to One Piece, which is not a deconstruction. It's a story. It is what it is. Whereas Hunter x Hunter is taking all these ideas and then kind of reflecting on them a little bit and questioning them. So I don't hold One Piece to that scrutiny.
You're not expecting that.
But I'm not expecting it, but I'm more just raising it as like a, because Hunter x Hunter was a big deal for me and very influential to me, and it's something that I think about, and that aspect of it was very clever. I now apply that to other things. You could say unfairly, but it's more just something that I think about. So that, and I feel like that's a lot of the conversation. A lot of people are like, I don't know why Carson's so concerned with this. That's why. It's not even that I expect anything to come out of it from One Piece. It's just that it's something that I think about a lot, and that's it. So, that's why I try to separate it, but I feel like I haven't been having this full conversation about it, and I hope that a lot of it made sense. It's very scattered thoughts, and that's what I mean why, like, I hadn't really come down what I thought about is because it was two separate things and it's very scrambled in my mind. It's still something that I'm trying to figure out for myself, what I think about all this, or how best I believe to approach something like that. Because I think it's a really interesting discussion. Like that's like, to me, like that's the discussion to have about any action sort of based story, like with violence at all. Is with any kind of violence, is like, what effect are we having on the world with all this stuff? It's not in a vacuum. And that's, to me, when in any story, when the stakes don't reach the level, it's not that the whole world needs to be at stake, but like if the fighters are just going to the desert to fight every time so they don't hurt any innocent people, and that's every single time, it feels like, well, our fighters are just inconsequential. They're in a vacuum. It's like they might be fighting for like a greater purpose emotionally, but like there's room to expand on that, I feel like. Anyway, it's a storytelling thing that I contemplate a lot. So I hope that makes sense to somebody.
I think that you explained it pretty good. Oh, we could go from this one. Mega Lazy Guy asked, out of the Straw Hats power-ups, what is your favorite? Luffy's gears, Zoro's 9 sword style, Sanji's...
Double Jambé.
Yeah.
For sure.
Chopper's monster point, Usopp's new slingshot, and Nami's new weapon are all the options. I think we could rank them. I think Sanji's was the best.
Yeah.
I think that was so cool. I also just
Sanji.
Liked that part of the fight.
Mm-hmm.
Luffy. Well, maybe Luffy's is better than Sanji's. I don't know. I feel because Luffy's is also Luffy got 2, which is kind of crazy. Sanji just got 1.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's Luffy and then Sanji.
For me, it's I guess as the transformations, I feel like Luffy has a lot more potential, and for like creativity, maybe the moment of that for me, Diablo Jambé was just something that I was not expecting. Yeah, it took me
really
by surprise.
Catch you off guard.
For that alone, I really love that. So I would put those as a moment. I would put that ahead. Well, but that feels shitty too, because like the big climactic moment of the whole arc was Luffy's thing. And the Bluno fight was so good.
Yeah,
like
that was incredible. Like
as an introduction to Gear 2, as the first like introduction to these like transformation type things. Yeah, it's a really tough one. Maybe Luffy edges out slightly.
I think when I think about it, I think he definitely does. But
yeah,
but Sanji, I think, is a lot above everyone else.
Power gap between Sanji and everyone else, and then
not even necessarily just like power, just like the coolness of that moment.
Yeah,
I think.
And then it would for me, then it has to be a discussion between Zoro and Chopper, because Chopper was more emotional.
Yes.
Zoro might have been cooler if it was the manga and not. So I want to talk about Zoro for a minute, but I want to finish ranking. I'm going to talk about like our reaction to the whole Zoro Kaku fight. But finishing the ranking, I'll put just because which transformation is cooler? Cool factor, Zoro's cooler than Chopper because it's like he's got fucking 6 swords or like 9 swords. A cool factor, I think that's cooler, but I liked the moment with Chopper more because it was more emotional and how we got more of his home as a flashback, and the fact that he was fighting like a Japanese style, whatever I forget what kabuki actor or whatever style thing, and then it's like the whole Sakura type stuff. I thought that was just like a cool interaction. So like emotional, I'd put that higher. And then the last 2, Zoro or Usopp's slingshot thing, is like, I guess it gives him a lot more range, but he was already shooting pretty far anyway. I don't know. Yeah. Well, I guess it's just so he could be a sniper. Yeah. I didn't think of that as like a big power up until it was listed there. Well, but I guess it is. I definitely
think like, I mean, he just had like a normal slingshot, and I think what really makes it a power up for him is that Usopp is always so afraid, and if he's in a close quarters combat, he usually gets the shit beat out of him. Yeah. So having an extra long range weapon really levels him up because he can participate in the fight
Mm-hmm.
while remaining at a safe distance that gives him the advantage and puts him on like a higher playing field than the opponents.
Yeah, and then Nami's super mega ultra climb attack or whatever it's called. I mean, it's just a slightly better version of the normal climb attack.
It's just the same thing, but if it wasn't filled with dumb party tricks.
Yeah, because she did the Mirage.
She did a similar. I don't think
she did one, but it was just her, right?
Yeah, I thought she did it, and then it wasn't her, but it wasn't like this. Like, oh, there's many of them, and they all are
different sizes,
different.
and she can change. She can appear as one of the other things, so it's like a transformation and a shadow clone jutsu together. Like I'll have to see it used in a better fight, but my problem with Nami is always that she's like the girl of the group, so she's never gonna get like that moment. I feel like Robin is too, but she had that fight with that giant motherfucker in Skypiea.
Yeah.
And
she also like fucking broke Spandam in half at the end.
She did do that.
Was sick as hell. Also,
like
Robin
Nami
was already kind of overpowered, like when she was introduced as just being able to have all these hands and just like fucking snap guys and X and stuff. So I feel like she didn't need that like physical power level up. She got like an emotional power level up.
Well, speaking of the again back to like the Robin thing, or wait, did you say Nami or Robin? What? You say
I was saying like Robin when she was introduced was a lot more powerful.
That's what I thought you said. Yeah, so like Robin, like the problem that's something that I don't know if I'll ever get over is the like we see something for the first time and it's never that powerful again.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like we see Robin first time, she's like overtaking everything, and then as you could say like as a consequence of learning about that ability, it becomes weaker, and like we learn about it and then we find the weakness and or something. But it's usually like it's introduced in a way that is like unbeatable or like just ridiculous, and if it's used in the right way, it could take any obstacle, and then and then time passes, and then we get to the point where we're supposed to overtake them, and now it's just never as strong as it is in the first time. And it's like the same with Robin is a good example where it felt like she could just hold person.
Well, she could also like
on everyone at once.
Yeah,
well, and they could do nothing at all.
It's also the case of like there's only like so violent that I think you can be, because
I mean they snap Spandam in half.
I know, but I'm saying like in an everyday fight, Robin could just like gouge people's eyes out instantly, and she did the whole thing where she like grabbed Frankie's balls and stuff, and that was funny. But it's like she could be so incredible, like not just like, oh, I'm gonna hold them down or I'm gonna like choke them out or something. It's like she could unimaginably fuck with people, you know what I mean, like just like gouging their eyes out or like choking like you know what I mean. It's just she could be a lot more creative, but then at the same time then it would just be ridiculous. It's like the black sand in Naruto of like where it's like instead of making these like objects and hitting people with them, you could just a whirlwind of them with sand or choke them with it.
But instead they make giant fists that just do bludgeoning damage.
Yes.
Instead it's supposed to, like the whole point of the Iron Sand is supposed to be like two things of it that just whoosh and shred you like a cheese grater.
But you can't do that everything because then it's not fun and
it's not fair. And it's exactly like that. And that's what it feels. It feels a lot like that's most of the time in One Piece. Not most of the time, a lot of the time, to me it feels like that's the one thing that I just need to get used to, that like the first time we see something that's gonna be badass, but I feel like that cheapens the first time we see things, because then if I'm like,
it's also interesting because I feel like sometimes we don't, and I think like I kind of had forgotten about the Blue No fight, but throughout this discussion I've just been thinking about it more. Yeah, because I feel like Blue No, the first time that we saw his ability, it sucked. Because it was like, he had to get opened as the door, and it wasn't.
There was
cool.
a lot in that period of the story that was clearly altered in order to facilitate the rest of the arc.
Then once his ability like actually got established of like, okay, this is actually what it is, then I feel like by the time he was in the fight with Luffy, he was 1,000 times more badass and cool.
That's true.
And he was way more intimidating. Like at first I would have been like, okay, who cares about Blue No? He's not that crazy. Yeah. But then when we were in the fight with him, it was like close, and the fact that it was so back and forth, and then Luffy like just pulled out ahead was was like I feel like it put it up there as like one of the top fights.
It was.
Even though I kind of forgot about it because so much happened later on.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Bluno was introduced as like threatening but like maybe not the most powerful guy, and then he came at it super threatening, and I was like intimidated by him throughout the entire fight. It wasn't like, oh, now I'm not intimidated by him anymore, just get rid of him. It was it was close. So I think that, you know, like I don't remember what power how when stuff is introduced it's usually cooler at the start.
Mm-hmm.
Like that I feel like was a case where it got progressively cooler.
Yes.
You know, as it went along.
Well, like you're right, but it's like you got to do like I do like a thought experiment with stuff like this, or like think about it this way. It's like that's where you get power creep, and it's a very dangerous drug that manga authors get addicted to, where okay, I want to have a badass thing, here's a really badass character, and Bluno is like one of the weaker guys, I think, or like middle of the road. Yeah. Like, do you think do you think that Bluno would have come off as strong if he was fighting, if Nami had showed up on the roof? Like, it depends on what the story needs, because if Nami showed up on the roof and we were at the point in the arc where we're going to start winning the fights, Bluno would be a bumbling idiot. But because Luffy showed up and we wanted to debut his new transformation to build up to the Lucci fight, Bluno gets to be a badass because it serves the power creep and the power scaling that is setting up for like a larger encounter later. So then Bluno can be, that's why Bluno feels like that fight was so good, is because Oda put him up against a guy who was also very strong. So Bluno didn't have to get nerfed in order to in order for that fight to be entertaining. Because a lot of times what happens is, because our heroes are our heroes and we love them and they're strong and they're cool and they're badass and they can do so much, we're, on paper, it seems like we're stronger than everybody. But then we get into a fight with somebody and it's like, usually due to anime pacing, honestly, or at least this amplifies the feeling tremendously. It's just like we get in there and it's like, okay, we're just going to mop the floor with this person. Or they're going to mop the floor with us because there's like a significant difference. And then, here's it just kind of, it has to equalize in order to have any kind of tension to the fight. So Bluno kind of got the opportunity to be like the super badass that, say, Khalifa didn't get an opportunity to do, even though if you compare them, like maybe in terms of this weird power level thing that Chapapa did, maybe they're not on the same number, but like as we find out, that number means nothing. It just is a way to like set up the fights going forward, for the audience. But it's a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous game to play. Normally, it worked out there, but it's a consequence of the setup for the Lucci fight, and that's kind of why it worked out that way. And I think if another person had showed up on that roof at a different point in the story, or at the same point in the story, or if, depending on what the story needed, things would work out differently. But you could say that, I guess, for anything. It's not really that fair.
Yeah. I did have this question from Nathan, who asked,
but I love the Bluno fight, to be clear. Yeah.
This saga is my favorite in the entire series, but it had my least favorite antagonists in the form of CP9. How did you guys feel about the group? I feel like this
I don't know what they mean by least favorite.
I feel like this is interesting. I'm sure antagonists later on are, good. We haven't gotten there, obviously.
I hope that's what it means.
But, because for me personally, even with, how we talked about with the Kaku and, everything, how it's like, they're introduced as being really strong and then they're a little bit weaker later on and it kind of feels like not as great. Even with like how disappointed I was in the Kaku fight, everything else to me was still good. And I feel like, especially compared to almost every single other pack of villains that has come along in One Piece so far, I feel like CP9 is is miles ahead.
It's not even close.
It's not even close. Like, maybe Rob Lucci is not my favorite, like, big boss villain, compared to,
who's better? I like him more than Crocodile. I like him more than, Arlong's design to me is still so cool.
Like, I did really like Arlong and the fight with Arlong and the, the battle of morals that was going on in that.
I still think Lucci's better than Arlong. Like when I think of everybody, like or along with his teeth and the whole and all that kind of stuff, and Luffy putting in the teeth, like it was still much more gaggy back then.
That's
well.
true. But I guess my thing is like to me, like the gap between Lucci and like some of those other ones is not as much as the gap between CP9 and any other like the
100%.
whatever I don't even remember what those guys were in Alabasta, the numbered guys. Yeah, Logworks.
The millions and the billions.
Like them and like the anyone in Skypiea, like none of them
it's not even close.
Came close to as good of as CP9 were. I feel like CP9 as a whole, like, you know, as far as being this like undercover organization, whatever, like anything about like some of the logistics of the story does not matter to me. They were way cooler and way more intimidating than any other villains in the story for me personally.
I agree with that. Yeah. I
think that like it's not even I cannot even describe how not even close it is. Especially in Water 7, it was that fucking reveal was so good. The fact that I genuinely felt betrayed. And then even after that, when they became, you know, when those other guys were introduced, those other guys, even though they weren't my favorite, some of them still surprised me. Like, the guy that was fighting Chopper that like first of all defeated Nami and then went on to fight Chopper, and it was like a close fight. Choppa somehow that fight with Frankie was so good. Blue Note so good. Khalifa had that like was not as great, but still better than almost any other like, you know, that rank of a villain.
Especially if you compare it like the parallel between Alabasta.
Yeah,
like similar situation, and then with
guys
CP9, it's like if you compare whatever her name, Miss 2, whatever the fuck her name was, the knife hand.
That was not good. And
it was like it was
it
ended up having the similar problems, but like if you like, you know, it suffers from the same thing because it's a Nami fight, so like you know, and Nami's so much a lower level than like the rest of the Straw Hats, so like it has the same problem, but it still is 10 times better, at least. Yeah.
And that was
that was the lower.
Well, other than like the Kaku one, but I think that would have been better in the manga. I don't think
100%. Like that's.
I know people got really, really mad at us, specifically at you, even though I think I liked it less than
I specifically was not being that harsh on it. But you really wanted to, but for some reason I got blamed for all of it. I don't know why.
So if you...
I guess because I just said fuck this guy in the reaction rather than saving it for the discussion.
Because I still am like... I mean, it's a TV show. It's not the end of the world. No one needs to like get mad. But like I really was disappointed in that fight. And... still to me that was better than like a lot of the other fights, and like that was the most disappointing one, and it was still better than like 90% of other fight. Like it was still better than almost every single other fight other than like, you know, Arlong, like the big ones. Like it was still better than any of the other like
I like the Kaku fight more than the Luffy versus Crocodile underneath Alabasta with the crumbling roof and everything. I feel like, you know, that's a real nostalgia boner that people have. But like when, you know, with the poison hook and like the like it just felt like it just ratcheted down every time they met. Like it just like you know, it just didn't feel as strong to me. So like compare, you know, I talk shit about the Kaku fight too, but yeah, you're right, comparing it to most other things, it was still like top 10 anime fights so far, maybe top 20. It was probably top 15.
It was still good. It had its moments, and even earlier on in the more like before it was like when it was Zoro was using Usopp as a sword, that was really funny. It went on for too long, but it was really funny, and I liked the idea of it. Yeah. So, you know, and the Sanji fight when he like his foot was on fire, but then also the Little Red Riding Hood story was like so fun. Like, I think it's like the first time that I felt like all of the characters really have their own personality, and they're really like, it's not just like, oh, I'm gonna bring out this random thing
who's just gonna be talking weird and laughing weird,
exactly,
and like not even looking cool, looking dumb. Like you're right, even with all that. And I will say with the Kaku thing, I said this in comments, I said it in a comment on Patreon, and then I said it in a comment on YouTube at some point, but I don't think most people have seen it. With the Kaku fight, what I was also comparing the Kaku fight and Zoro's like big transformation moment was there were 4, including that, there were 3 other big Zoro moments in this saga. And it was it was the Ashura, and then there was the Indra or whatever maybe it's not Indra, is like the reverse, like the death god, whatever the fuck thing in the lobby. That to me, that was like a cooler moment than the way the anime portrayed the Ashura moment and the lead up to it with the whole like repeating animation.
Yeah. Not to mention the train
with T-Bone. That to me might have been the best one.
And the wave.
And then the wave. So we had 4 giant badass Zoro moments. And if I think about all of those moments individually, the Kaku one lands on the bottom of that list. That's what I was more comparing things to, was the other, because I think the way Zoro's sort of story, the way Oda I think thought about it maybe, or planned it out, or thinks about those moments is probably the same, where he was like ratcheting up Zoro's badassery with each moment, and then the crescendo, the big moment, was when he has 9 swords and he summons this Ashura spirit, and he's like, it's just this whirlwind, and it's this beautiful, crazy dance of swordsmanship is fucking sick. In theory, it's sick. On the page, I imagine it's sick. In the anime, it was a lot of back and forth, like 2 like repeating gifs, just like hovering from one side of the screen to the other. Kick, throw into the wall, smoke, and then just like clashing back. Say one line over and over again until the really slideshow-esque, clash with this thing. And it was like, it was cool. It manages to be cool. But it was again, it didn't hit that potential that I think the manga probably did. And I felt like the anime really failed me in that moment, because they had already padded things so heavily at that point, and it had just come, I think, right after the Chopapa fight or right after the Chopper fight, one of those.
Yeah.
Or maybe right after the Diablo Jambe.
I think it might have been right after.
So I was coming right off of that, where I was,
you were blown away, yeah.
And then, because it came out of nowhere, that was the big thing with it. It was snappy. It was like we had all this really funny moment with the whole
Red Riding Hood,
the
and
story.
Then,
and it's like, oh, I'm secretly Robin's brother, and we know that's bullshit because, like, what?
It's just so ridiculous that it catches you off guard.
But so we weren't expecting it, and then Diablo Jambe comes in, and then there's like an actual clash, and it lasts just the amount, and it's gone in a flash, and it's so fucking satisfying and sick. And then we know that something like that is going to happen with Zoro, because it's been building up to it in a way that it hasn't with Sanji, because there hasn't been a build up to some crazy crescendo moment with Sanji the whole arc, with the wave, and then T-Bone, and then in the lobby, and then in the Kaku fight. But between that, there was this huge... So there's a lot going against it, in my opinion. I understand if a lot of people are upset that we didn't react the way that they wanted to. That's fair. People watched us for like a long time, or maybe have just searched us up just for this one reaction, and we didn't deliver. And I guess I'm sorry, because it just wasn't that good to me personally. And I don't think it was that good to you either.
It was definitely not that good to me. But at the same time, I think a lot of it was the adaptation problem.
I think
and
most of it was. I think almost all of it was.
Especially given the fact that the end of that fight, when like they have that little exchange when Kaku is like dying on the ground, it was you know what I mean? Like the way that it like that epic moment that like maybe didn't hit as hard as it probably could have. And then that like ending scene, I was like, in that ending scene, I was like, damn, I wish that I had like been as into that fight as they wanted me to be. And then this moment would have like
exactly.
I was like, this could have been like top moments in One Piece, and it's still a good moment, but it was just
okay because it was because like they and it also is frustrating because they poured that sauce on other fights, other lesser fights like the Chopapa fight. It like all of these other fights gave us with low expectations. I talk about this in the reactions as well, where we had low expectations going to these, and then like his funny character becomes cool. That's a cool arc. Cool character becomes funny is less cool. It's less fun. It's more, for some people, I'm sure it's fine. For some people, that maybe is their preference. For me, not my preference. And I'm allowed to have that preference. And
that's it doesn't mean that we hate the show.
And it doesn't mean we're hate watching One Piece just because we don't like, adaptations padding shit out and fucking up what could have been, you know, a literal top One Piece moment. But the disconnect, I think, for viewers is that for them it still is a top One Piece moment because they aren't watching things. Again, we're watching things from a different perspective, and that's very important to remember.
In hindsight, like I feel like I already
think of it more fondly.
Think of it more fondly than in the moment when I was when I was really disappointed and not just disappointed because I hated it so much, disappointed because I could see that I could have really loved it.
Yeah.
If things had been handled a little bit differently. But I think as you get farther away from things, and I think about this with Naruto all the time.
We talked about it while we were watching Naruto.
There was moments in Naruto that I was like, this is fucking stupid and terrible and annoying. But then looking back, I don't remember
all the bad
all
things.
that stuff. Sometimes I remember like, yeah, this arc was a slog, but I don't remember sitting there every moment slogging through. I just remember like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was a slog, but I remember that one moment that was badass.
Yeah.
And I think, especially if you were like reading it, it was probably really cool. If you know, like it's, and the farther you get away from it, or like when you see where this character ends up later on, then maybe you can see in hindsight, like, oh, this was like a really formative moment, not necessarily specifically about the Kaku fight, but just in general, you know, as things go on. Same with the whole arc as a whole. I feel like, you know, I can see why people probably look back on this arc very, very fondly. You know, especially when you're like 1,000 episodes in, this probably is like, yeah, this was like the moment where like Frankie got added, and now we've had so many adventures with Frankie, and Thousand Sunny got added, and now we've had so many adventures with Thousand. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. Like I
think like for what we talk about, like you know, in hindsight, that's how I feel the same way about very early One Piece, like
Kuro and stuff.
Yeah, but specifically the art style, but like the way characters looked, the whole vibe of it. I feel like if I were to rewatch it, you know, maybe One Piece version just to cut out all this shit, but it wasn't even that bad, honestly. In early One Piece, it wasn't as bad as it is now, with like padding and stuff. Yeah, I just feel like I already have a bit of that, and that's something that is always going to be disconnect with reactions when people don't react the way that people want, and that's kind of how it is.
There's no real way to avoid that other than
like the only way to avoid that is for people to understand that we're not going to feel, we're not always going to feel the way that they feel about everything.
But it doesn't mean that we are,
and also that their perception of what we're reacting to, you know, if we were to put a camera on them when they were watching it for the first time, they wouldn't be screaming and flying around the room. They would be like, maybe like, whoa, fuck, or something.
But if you're like at 2 a.m. on the couch,
you probably don't even remember like what you looked like when you know did that. We remember what we look like all the time because it's on the internet, and you know, so it's just a disconnect that's always going to be there with the reactions versus actual authentic watching experience, which we try to replicate as much as possible. But just the nature of doing a reaction is a bit unnatural, no matter how you slice it. So there's always going to be a difference in the way that we react to the way that people expect, unless we straight up just pander and fake our reactions all the time, which we don't do. But you know, that's a common tactic that works for people, and not I'm not even saying One Piece community. I'm saying like reactions overall, and all types of reactions, music reactions as well. But yeah, you know, if you're not willing to react the way people want, then it's like a slot machine. It's like, you know, you put in so much, and like every episode is a spin, and you're spinning and you're spinning, and then one of these times, one of the moments is gonna hit, and it's gonna align, and you're gonna hit the jackpot, and the people are gonna naturally have the reaction that people want them to have. But that's such a rare occurrence that it's gonna be that those things are going to completely intermingle, unless, you know, you are okay with, I guess, faking your reactions, or you're just a really big personality and don't care about anything.
I think that's the thing. Neither of us, and some people are the type of people that, you know, you watch TV by yourself and you're like screaming at the TV and stuff. But like that's you know, not.
Instead, what we do is we just heckle the show no matter what it is. Like that's not like, you know, I get tired of it now, and like we'll be watching, and then Lindsay will still be reacting to it. I'm just like, we're not getting paid right now. Like, you don't need to.
I'm like roasting a character.
Yeah, we're like watching Avengers, jokes. And you're just like, fucking, what is this guy? And I'm like, Jesus, save it for the fucking camera. Like, we're like, But I do it sometimes as well. I used to do it a lot more.
I still do it
talking
all the
to her and
time.
stuff. Now I really separate, like, okay, I'm watching just for me. I'm gonna have that conversation, but it's just gonna be in my head. And then Lindsay will be like, no, it wasn't on me. She was just like looks like she's just heckling the whole time, and I'm just like, shut up.
Yeah, see, this is what I have to deal with. Unsupportive. Wants me to get on camera and react, but wants a genuine reaction, but doesn't want that reaction when we're just trying to watch a movie before bed. Terrible.
What's the next question?
The next
We're gonna talk about Lucci.
We could. I was thinking, because we were just talking about Zoro.
Oh.
Black Snow asked, Zoro has shown some interesting things this saga, taking more of a silent treatment during the Luffy versus Usopp argument, had a comment about Luffy's role as captain and comparing to the rest of the crew, and it took a firm stance at the end. Apology first, or there's no room for him anymore. How do you feel about that as a whole? Looking back, do you think that he was firmly established himself as a first mate?
I didn't think about this until somebody said in the comments, but the first mate thing is just a live action thing. I don't think they've said that he's a first mate so far. Have they?
Really?
Like, he just kind of takes that role, and I feel like he is that role. Maybe maybe I'm blanking, but I remember a comment.
Well, he was the first person to join the crew, so I guess it would kind of be automatic.
I don't know. But Nami's the navigator. That's like a ship position.
Yeah.
There's like a shipwright. That's like a ship position. They're not just the engineer. They're the shipwright. That's like a thing. But I think they mentioned first mate in the live action, but I saw a comment, I don't know if it's accurate, that they haven't actually said Zoro's the first mate in the anime. I don't know though, but he is. That's his job. So as far as like how he fits into that, I think it's perfect. I think it's awesome. I think it's I love Zoro for that reason. Especially in that situation. How was Sanji? Sanji was just trying to calm shit down. He was like kicking people around, or like,
he was trying to help out Chopper, and like, he was really
trying to mediate and keep everybody, good.
Became,
but
like,
Zoro,
the mom friend in that moment of like.
But Zoro just stayed in the back and was like, we're not gonna. This is like exactly what I felt while watching. Is I felt like Zoro was like me, or like how I felt like my feelings were represented by Zoro in that moment, where I'm just like, this is the kind of conversation where just like, let's avoid conflict. That's not going to solve this situation. It's like sometimes people are just getting pissy and they just need to take a time out. Sometimes they have a serious thing that needs to be addressed, and that's this moment. So like stopping it or shutting it down or saying, everybody relax, let's just take a minute, let's talk about this. Like sometimes, I feel like in life there's sort of like a when you think about like school and stuff, there's like a and in law when you're grown up, like, raising your voice or like it coming to violence, that's like off the table. Like when you think about society, like when you think about, your teachers telling you something, or conduct in the workplace or what have you, like in normal life, like getting really serious like that and impassioned and taking a stance, that's like not okay in most situations, even socially, like with your friends or whatever. But like there are some times where raising your voice is like, it should be okay, or it's the correct answer, or it's like, it shouldn't be this like, you're not, you know what I mean? Like sometimes it's okay. This is one of the moments where that's the way to go, I guess. And it's just, I think that Zoro saying like, just let it happen is, and stick by your word, and
I also
all that stuff.
Yeah, I also really liked the whole the first thing he says to us needs to be an apology.
I love that. Yeah.
Or else we're not listening. But also like he knows Usopp, and he lets it slide, but they just pretend not to hear. Like, you know what I mean? He's not like, he doesn't, I guess what I like about it is that he knows Usopp enough to know that he's not saying all of that random shit because he's not sorry. and he's gonna double down and be like, no, the first thing he said was dumb bullshit. We're not letting him back on the crew. You know what I mean? Like he sets the hard rule of he needs to apologize first, but then when he doesn't apologize first, he lets him ramble and then only counts the apology as the first thing he said because that was the first thing that he was really saying.
Yeah.
Usopp is just the kind of guy that needs to yap for a little bit before he says what he actually genuinely means and wants to say. Because that's just the kind of guy that he is. That's just the kind of guy he is.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, and I liked that it came around. Yeah, I mentioned that like at the very start of the podcast. That to me really, like, I don't know how to put this either exactly. I don't know how to say it, but it's like just the commitment to that from a story perspective is what I appreciate and what I respect. Is like, yeah, it's just, I go back to Naruto, we learned so much about the interactions with like elements in Naruto and the way that there's this rock, paper, scissors thing of all these different elements. And then you get to a certain point in the story and apparently the perfect counter to a fireball jutsu is another fireball jutsu. It's not whatever. I guess it would be just rock or whatever it would be, or water
maybe.
I forget, because they specifically like cancel each other out or like have different interactions based on where they are in the little circle there. So that's like a power system thing, but it's the same principle where it's like you did all this effort to set up this really important thing. In this case, it's an emotional sort of discussion, and it's important to the characters, and it's, if done right, it should have lasting impact even in subtle ways forever. This is the kind of situation that should be impacted forever. And even if it's not like revisited verbally again in like a serious conversation later, maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it might, and it feels like it matters because of, again, it's similar to how the Aokiji thing was cut out. And that kind of fucked with how Long Ring Longland is connected in our minds to the rest of the arc or the rest of the saga. Like, you cut out that one little bit. That's the punctuation, and that's the situation with Zoro saying that, and with the way Usopp came back. Is there needed to be that commitment, that final smaller moment to help make all of this feel like it's going to carry over into the next thing. They did that. I love it. It was way better than I expected. And I'm so glad that it ended up that way because it was so good.
Yeah, I also feel like I really like when Zoro, gets to have moments like that, because I feel like a lot of Zoro in the everyone has their, like, every character has their, like, emotional role or like that they serve, and then they also have their like funny or just like at rest kind of role where like Zoro's like sleeping or being really cool and fighting. So for me it's an interesting thing. There's questions asking us to rank the characters, like a lot of them, so I feel like we could do that, but like for me Zoro is interesting because I feel like normally in like a day-to-day One Piece, he's definitely not my favorite. Like, I mean, I still like him, he's fine, but he's not my ultimate favorite. But in moments like that, I'm like, wow, I have a lot of respect for you, and you're really cool, Like, even in the fighting and stuff, and the Zoro fights are cool, but they're still not always my favorite. I'm not the kind of person that is like, oh, I love fights and I love to see cool fights, like I like them, but they're not like the highlight of the story for me. So Zoro, in these moments where he is kind of taking on that first mate role, I feel like are moments where I connect to him as a character and I like him a lot more. And you know what I mean? Like I feel like that's where I'm like, yeah, Zoro's really cool. It's like he's obviously really cool when he's cutting through waves and stuff, but like those are the moments where I'm like, yeah, this is like the character of Zoro.
Yeah, I agree. I feel the same way. I don't know if I would rank them, who would be.
It's so hard for me because like, yeah, I feel like a lot of people asked us to rank the characters.
I don't know how you would,
and I don't know how, because here's my thing: is it's like, because because of that like thing of like when it's the focused on them and when it's their like emotional moments is so different from like sometimes their day-to-day. Like I'm always like, oh, Chopper's so cute, but if I just had to be like baseline Chopper versus like baseline some of the other characters, Chopper would probably be kind of low for me.
I feel like Chopper would either Chopper or Nami would be at the bottom of the pile, but it's not like I do that very reluctantly. I don't even know if I really believe that, because like what they add is so much. They add so much to the story. So like I don't know, because usually I feel like it's pretty obvious, but it's not obvious. Like I feel like maybe Zoro would be lower too, or middle, but I also would put him like it's also recency as well, because like Robin I might put at the top because she has a lot more relevance.
But at the same time, potentially during the next arc, Robin might be more towards the bottom. So
like the only way to really do it would be to, whether you're watching the manga or watching the anime or reading the manga, literally tally up and like put a score on each of their big moments or each of their conversations and like rank them. You'd have to do like a fucking analysis, like a full-on scientific analysis of the whole show scene by scene, and be like have a numbered graph that shows like what their score is.
Because I feel like, a lot of people were like, oh, I'd love it if you ranked all the characters and that you did this after every arc, and I feel like that's probably because other people as well, it's like the recency thing, or who was like the focus of the arc, because it's like, and then but it's it's also always so strange because like Sanji, I feel like, is very middle, but then the fact that like even fillers about him, like I think about his fillers more than I think about some other characters, like actual shit that they did in the canon events, know? And like that's because I just really like his character as like his baseline like rest mode character. I kind of like, but at the same time, like, when he's just like freaking out about girls is like, that's not that interesting. It's still kind of funny, but it's not that it's very complicated. I feel like for me, like Luffy is definitely probably at the top, especially after this arc, and like all the stuff with Usopp and all the
and for putting Frankie,
well, and that's the other thing, I'm like, I love Frankie's character development within this arc alone, the way that he was introduced. I feel like we need to have a whole separate discussion of Frankie, honestly, but like
we haven't even talked about Frankie at all.
We're like 2 hours into this podcast and I feel like we haven't even gotten like half into it, which is crazy. But like Frankie, I'm like, I feel like Frankie would be at the top, but like we also just met him. I don't know if he'll stay at the top, but like for me, Frankie right now is probably like number 2 or 3 because he's just awesome.
Yeah,
he's just so great and I love him. And then like Robin,
I really like Frankie because he's different.
And I feel like he like he has all these jokes, but like the fact that we were there kind of for like, okay, we saw his backstory, but we were also there for like a lot. Like he went from like a villain who beat the shit out of Usopp and stole all of our money to like someone who is now beloved and like part of the crew, and we're like stealing his underwear so that he joins us. And and he's leaving behind his family, but they want him to go because they know that this is his destiny, and he built us a ship. It's just like, you know what I mean? He's in such a short amount of time, and like he was so dedicated to getting Robin back, and he already has like relationships with other people. Like it feels like he already just like fits in so perfectly. Like it felt like before the arc I was like, I don't know how they're gonna add another person without me being kind of annoyed that they're adding another person and it's like kind of taking away from some other people. But I feel like because he was so different, it feels like, how did we ever like not have him, you know? Like I was really sad when we left Vivi behind, which is also funny that they both have blue hair as well. But with Frankie, I'm like, he just adds so much, I feel like.
I honestly, I don't know how I would rank them. I seriously don't, because I like them all differently. It's not like if it was because the show is like not all about one thing at a time. Like it's about, I don't even know how to say it, but it's like if I'm watching Dragon Ball Z, it's like most of it's the fighting, you know, like it's a fight, or there are those moments where you're in between and they're like eating stuff, or they're going to the world tournament. There's a lot of like stare downs and shit. And you like people for different reasons, but you like, it all kind of comes down to the fighty stuff most of the time, or how cool their cool moments are. And it's like, it's kind of focused on that. One Piece isn't focused on that in the same way. So like, it's harder to, like, you know, there's the history, there's lore piece, and fucking, you know, all the, like, there's many different angles to enjoy the series. You know, you could be more into the gags, or you could be more into the fights, or you could be more into the lore and the backstory. You could be more into the emotional drama of, like, you know, like the Usopp situation and stuff, or, you know, you could care more about their long-term goals, or more about the world building, you know. It's separate, and each character has a different interaction with all of those aspects. So, like, you know, I really like Robin might be at the top of my list right now. It's because she's the most tied to poneglyphs and all that shit.
Yes.
So but also now we have Frankie. So Frankie's tied into that as well, and he has the, you know, technical knowledge as well for Pluton and stuff. I don't know. I honestly don't know. So
I would say, like, I'll just give, like, top or bottom. And the bottom does not mean I do not like them. It's just I can't like, I feel like, okay, like right now, like Luffy, Robin, Frankie, Sanji are maybe in like the top, or like, then I feel like Nami is like just below that, because I really enjoy Nami. And then Chopper and Zoro are more towards the bottom, maybe, for me.
I don't know where.
And Usopp is also like kind of in the, like, I think he's like in the upper middle.
I don't know what I'm not even gonna rank them. Because I seriously don't know how I would rank them.
It's really difficult. I feel like in other shows I could so easily, or like, I mean, it would still be a challenge, but I could like easily be like, this is like a hesitant but like decently established list.
Like not to go away from a Naruto comparison, like a Hunter x Hunter comparison, or a Jujutsu Kaisen comparison. I could easily find like my top 3 characters, and I guess it's also that, you know, those aren't shows with like a crew. There's not like a crew, like, yeah, there's the main 4. There's like Akashi, Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, but then you also got like Shikamaru and Choji, and you got, I guess, Ino and fucking Hinata.
And you have like Sai and Yamato.
And Sai
is like top, but everyone hates him.
Yeah, Sai might be better than Sasuke, but we won't talk about that. Again, in theory, he's better than Sasuke, but he never gets the shine that he should. But yeah, and, you know, I could talk about all. You could make it's like, okay, Kurapika, or, you know, a lot of people like Crollo and Meruem as like their top, and then fucking, you know, you could like Killua, you could like rank them. Like, it's easy. You could do it pretty easily. Like, there's some debate on like spot by spot, but like when I think about the Straw Hats, I don't know, like, I can't think of tangible reasons why one would be above the other one. Yeah. Really. You know?
Yeah, it's hard, and because it switches all the time. Like, in some moments, Chopper is my absolute favorite. I literally have a Chopper hat. Like, I love Chopper, but I don't think that he hasn't been, like, other than like the monster Chopper. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's then it becomes hard to compare him in like moments where other people are like, just when other people are in the spotlight, it's like, oh yeah, I love them so much too.
Yeah.
So it's hard, because it's just like, I love all of them. So whichever one is like being loved by the story at that moment is like top, kind of.
Yeah.
And, you know, but that's good. That's good to have, you know, it's better than being like, oh, I fucking hate all of these guys and I can't stand them. I only like one character, you know, because that's no good. I will say there was a couple questions about, but like not any specific ones, but I wanted to touch on, because we already talked about CP9, and now that we're talking about characters and stuff, I feel like the side characters in this one, like, there was a lot of them, but they were all so good. Like Kokoro and Polly and you know, what's her, Chimney and Gonbei, like, they were like so. I think like that's the other thing, is like the side characters felt like it wasn't just like they were like, oh, go this way, or like, oh no, I'm having trouble, help me. It was like they were all like within the story and like coming in at different moments and doing different things and like filling their role. And like I didn't expect, Chimney to be running around and like doing stuff, and I didn't expect Kokoro to turn into a mermaid and save them at the last second, but it happened and it all felt like it fit. It didn't feel like, it felt like all of the characters were so established early on, like Yokozuna, and like when we see him jump in front of the train and then he comes back in the end and he's being awesome and stuff. And with Kokoro, how she was like, we see her and we're like, what's this weird lady at the train station? And then we see her again drinking with Frankie, and then we see her again like around, and then she like, the characters were so established that we didn't need to get like new characters later on, and we didn't need to like I don't know, they just all came in strong and then like stayed exactly their welcome and filled exactly like the perfect amount of role that you would want them, and even more in a lot of cases than I thought. It wasn't like what was that girl's name in Skypiea, the girl like angel that they saw,
Conus?
Yeah, like she was she was there and she did have some clutch moments, but she was also kind of on the sidelines. And this, it felt like everyone was a lot more integrated and we were all really working together to like complete goals, and people were helping in their own way on the sidelines, but they would like come in and like have their moment. Yeah. Like
I remember the Shandians as well. That's kind of like, you could think of them as like the Frankie family or something.
The Frankie family was awesome. Like, and I was fully expecting to hate the Frankie family. I was like, oh, these guys, or like, why are these guys coming? But they just kept,
they could have got a little bit more characterization.
But I still felt like, especially in the end when they're like telling Frankie to go, like, I felt like they got way more development than I would have ever thought upon their first introduction of just being like dumbasses in weird outfits, Yeah,
that's true.
Like, I feel like I got attached to them, and I would not have expected to get attached to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. I just think, like, especially, compared to all previous arcs, I feel like the reveal with CP9 wouldn't have been as good if we didn't, get endeared to them first, and we didn't care about them as like, shipwrights. Like, if we didn't meet them and we're like, oh yeah, these guys are awesome, then we wouldn't have cared when they were revealed to be villains. But it also would have been suspicious if like only they had gotten character development, but it wasn't only them. Like, everyone else was made to feel like an important character as they got introduced to us this arc, I think. Mm-hmm. For me, anyway.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. Johnny Arzola asks, this is irrelevant but important to me. Have you gotten used to your short hair?
Yeah, I got used to it pretty quick. The problem is that it's not growing properly. It's growing way faster on the sides than on the top. So I can't even get it cut properly until it grows longer on the top. And that's really annoying because my head looks really square when I'm not wearing a hat.
That's why we have hat piece.
Hat cast.
Bold
hat. Mm-hmm. But I got used to it like way faster than I thought. Mm-hmm. But and I've had short hair before. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, Carson's the guy with the long hair. I usually cut my hair really short, like once a year. And then it's very usually pretty short. Not late in recent years hasn't been as short, but yeah, like cut it right down. I'm not always a guy rocking long hair. I just let it grow out.
Mm-hmm. And Toby SG asked a very important question as well. What are your theories on Michael and Hoichel from the backstreets? What do you think the implications they have on the story are? I mean,
I think we know. We watched the filler. This must be coming from somebody who didn't watch the filler, who was asking, why the fuck are they watching filler? We know the full story of Michael and Hoichel from the backstreets. Lore acquired.
We love Michael and Hoichel from the backstreets. Amazing. Their family, incredible. I'm so glad that Zoro's their big brother now.
Now?
Oh, yeah, you're right. He always was. He just forgot. He didn't know.
He was playing dumb.
He was switched at birth, so that's why he didn't. He forgot his true origins. He was swept away by Aqua Laguna.
Yeah. Michael and Hoichel from the backstreet.
Mm-hmm. We talked about this before. This person asked a couple of questions. Yo-sama asked, now that Garp has been officially introduced in the anime, do you have any strong opinions on how he was presented in the live action as opposed to how he was in the anime?
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit. It was like, a completely different person. And I was pretty, I liked Garp fine from the live action. He seemed like, but even watching the live action, when he would like break out laughing, or when he was like eating all the steak, and that was supposed to be like a connection to him and Luffy, and it was supposed to be like foreshadowing or whatever, it came off less like wacky One Piece character in real life, more like sinister and like unhinged evil. Like
it definitely did have that vibe. Is this guy like mentally stable at all?
It didn't come off right even then, and I thought that they were like, it was.
You thought they were cooking.
I don't know what I thought. I thought that it was weird, and then it makes sense now seeing what Garp actually is. That the live action was just not right. It did not give the right vibe. Like, Garp in the live action feels more like, who does he feel like? I don't even know.
Like
he doesn't.
A weird version of Smoker almost.
Well, yeah, they kind of, people talked about that as well. How they kind of collided or combined both characters, but it's Smoker, but like he's more authoritative. I don't know. Like it just, he's not the same person. And in hindsight, like looking at it now, live action's Garp fucking sucks ass. Honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it's hard because I love the Marine. I loved Kobe. I loved like the chase. Like I felt like that really added to the live action.
100%, yeah.
But Garp, after seeing what Garp is meant to be, I feel like they definitely could have still had like the main story beats of the live action with having the Marines and Garp there that early, but with more the Garp having more of the anime like aspects of his
I feel like it's hard because
personality.
Garp, like, Zeph felt different too, but the anime version after watching live action was like, it felt more larger than life, than like the Zeph, and like he was just funny and like weird and like weirder than he was in the live action. But the live action, it felt congruent, like it didn't feel so different. With Garp, it might be a casting thing, but I feel less like the actor that played Garp did a bad job. I don't think he did a bad job. I feel less like that. I feel like more he did a really good job for the fake Garp that they had made for the live action and the type of story that they were going with. I feel like it worked out really well. I feel like he did a good job for what he did and what we got. But compared to who Garp actually is, it feels completely wrong. And that's kind of the whole opinion. I like Garp though.
Yeah, I really like Garp.
I think he's funny. He's like, he has kind of a gag nature to him, like, oh, sorry.
But he still comes across as very strong. Like, that if he was really trying to get us, he could probably get us.
Yeah.
But it's his grandson, and he's disappointed in him for being a pirate. But he's just a funny guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like him. Mm-hmm. I like him a lot. I can't wait to hear more about him. I like one detail I really loved was that Nami knew who Garp was. I love when they call back to the backstory in ways that I don't expect. Like, just like, oh yeah, because Belmare was a Marine. Of course, she would know about like a Navy hero or something. Mm-hmm. It was awesome.
Yeah, and I really like the Kobe and Helmeppo. I really like the joke where they're all like, "Oh, Kobe, our friend," and Helmeppo's like, "I'm here too," and it's like, you weren't our friend.
Yeah,
you were an asshole. You and Kobe are now besties, but like that doesn't change. Like we haven't.
And I like how Zoro's just like, "Wait, who even are you?" Like as if, because if you think about the journey we've been on, it's like he's cut down and fucked around with hundreds of people. Like he wouldn't remember some random nobody who didn't even put up a fight. Like. Yeah. So it makes sense that you would forget him. And it doesn't it might be like a, he's the dumb, strong guy, but like, I think it's more just like a, like more Helmeppo's pathetic than Zoro has a bad memory or something,
Yeah. And I always really like Kobe. I loved Kobe in the live action. Love Kobe in the cover story. love Kobe again now. I like to see how far he's come and that he's really
Sergeant Kobe.
Yeah, he's strong now. He's still not as strong as Luffy, but he's learning those powers and stuff. I feel like it's awesome. I'm excited for him, and I'm excited to see him again, even later when he's like, really been like training with Garp for a long time and has gone on to another level. 100 Rainy asked, "Who's your favorite animal companion from this arc? Yokozuna, Gonbei,
Funkfried, for sure.
Funkfried?
For me, yeah.
For you, really? There's Tyrannosaurus, Iceberg's Mouse, Hottery, Funkfried, Sodom, and Gomorrah. Those were the options. And how would you rank them compared to animal companions of previous arcs, such as Karoo, Pierre?"
Well, nothing can beat Karoo. But
yeah, Karoo is really good.
I would say Funkfried. I like Gonbei, but Gonbei feels more like a character than like an animal companion.
Yeah, like he seems just like a child.
Yeah. And Sodom and Gomorrah are okay for me. Tyrannosaurus, I forgot that was the name of the mouse. I really love the mouse.
Him.
I love how abruptly he was just added at the start of the arc, but he's already like a feature.
Love that he like wasn't Iceberg's pet for a long time. Like Iceberg finds him.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
As we see, and then he's just there forever.
Yeah.
That was so good.
I thought it was gonna come into play more or something, be like a plot point, but it never ended up being one really.
I love Yokozuna.
Yokozuna, but again, Yokozuna to me feels
like
more like a character.
But I mean, Karoo was kind of like a character.
That's true. If we're putting Karoo in the category, then yeah, Yokozuna probably is my favorite. Yeah,
Yokozuna. Funkfried is good, even though he was on the bad side. I wish that Zoro had him.
But Funkfried also isn't an animal. Funkfried's a sword.
Yeah, but he's a kind of a guy.
He ate the animal fruit. He ate an animal fruit, but he's not an animal. He's a sword. But, so, just depends. Semantics, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway. I like all of them. Gonbei, is also really good. Top. Yeah. They're all good, and I like them a lot. I like how many of them there were.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that, and I feel like that enhanced the arc, just having so many like great little guys around.
Yeah.
Even Hottery, like you hate him, but like he's still there and he's funny.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good. And Sodom and Gomorrah, they were so good. They risked their lives. I'm glad that they're still okay though.
Yeah, I fully thought they were dead.
Mm-hmm. This is another good one. From Claire Voyage to kind of start talking about other stuff that we like pretty much haven't even touched on yet. Considering Shanks' background as a former member of Goldie Rogers' crew and his current status as one of the 4 emperors on the same level as Whitebeard, quotes, the strongest man in the world, and the man closest to the One Piece, how do you see his role and influence in the story evolving, given his position among the top dogs in One Piece world? What do you think are his motivations?
What are his motivations? Some piratey shit. I don't know. Probably.
There's also.
Well, he said like betting. He's bet his arm on a new era.
That arm, I betted on the new era.
Everyone wants us to talk about that, like we missed it or something. I just feel like it's self-explanatory. That's why I haven't talked about it. I feel like it's. Okay, so this guy, who's one of the strongest people in the world, didn't accidentally lose his arm to a Sea King. He gave up his arm to inspire Luffy to, be the next generation or something. That's what I feel like. But I feel like I thought that was so, like, that's just what happened, I thought. Maybe it's not. Maybe I should talk about it because maybe it's worth a discussion, obviously. But, like, I guess I just never, it was significant, but it's like, among the other things that we were learning and thinking about in that part of the arc, I was like, that just seemed like the most clear, obvious thing. Yeah, of course. So this guy who can, cut the clouds and who is, destroying fucking wood ship and knocking people unconscious
just by his vibe.
And who literally, his aura is so high that he just frightens people to death, but just by being around him when he's feeling a little bit saucy, That's the guy that lost his arm to just a random Sea King in the East Blue. That doesn't make any sense. and then he says, I bet my arm on a new era. That's like as clear cut as it gets. Is Luffy's kind of part of the new era. He's kind of
and like Blackbeard's like also like kind of in the new era.
He's
like,
talking
they're
about that a lot.
that.
Yeah. So like I feel like that's as clear cut as it gets. He gave up his arm on purpose and gave up his hat to Luffy, and is passing the torch in a way, or maybe there's a somewhat sinister tone to it. Maybe he's actually a villain.
He's
we
like
don't know.
Dumbledore over here.
Maybe he is. Maybe he is. Maybe he did that to like in a way manipulate Luffy. Maybe it depends on how dark the story wants to go.
That's what I was also gonna ask. Like, do you think because like he's like, oh no, we can't have Ace go up against Blackbeard yet. Do you like? And like knowing now what at first it was like, oh, obviously because Ace is just gonna clap Blackbeard, and then it's like, or like why doesn't he want that to happen? And then it's just like, oh no, because Blackbeard is fucking out of control. So then it's like, I hadn't thought about like the weird like Dumbledore aspect before, but now I'm like, what like. Does he not want that yet because he wants like Luffy to have that motivation of Ace getting killed by Blackbeard, but it's a little bit too early in Luffy's journey. He's not like in the new world yet. He's not like quite at the level where that's going to like hit him in the perfect moment to inspire him to like do exactly what Shanks wants him to do, Or is it just because like the new era is approaching, but Shanks is trying to like hold off a little bit longer before things get crazy,
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly, probably something like that. He seems like he's a 5D chess player, this Shanks. He's not just like the kite of the story, this guy who shows up and like, meets the kid and then inspires him to like go do this shit. And then, maybe, but like, I think, there's clearly more to that. He's clearly doing a lot more behind the scenes and has a lot more aspirations. We had the idea when we first were seeing him at the end of the East Blue, where you were like, why is this guy who's apparently so badass
just sitting around,
chilling in a pirate cove on an island, just fucking drinking his life away? I got the impression that they were just on downtime and were about to head out somewhere. Which, by the way, they were in the East Blue. Where are they now? They're in the New World?
They're in the...
Or are they
well,
just in the Grand Line?
They're in the Grand Line, because I don't know if they're in the New World yet, because Blackbeard wasn't that... like, he was kind of... like around the same place as us. I don't know how far away we are. Like, between Skypiea and now, did Blackbeard have time to like get to the new world?
We don't know if Blackbeard and they were nearby. We don't. I forget. I forget where they said they were. Oh no, didn't they say they were in like the North or West Blue or something like that?
Oh.
Or am I crazy?
I thought they were in the Grand Line, because last time we saw Ace, he was in the Grand Line. Last time we saw Blackbeard.
But again, we weren't fought with them. We were separate from them. I feel like there was something where they said that they were in one of the other oceans.
Well, Shanks and Whitebeard were definitely in the New World.
They were? That's what I was just asking.
Yeah, sorry, I got a little bit confused, but yeah, they were.
I can't remember, but what was the point of that?
That Shanks potentially is like going in and out of the Grand Line.
Yeah, exactly. So like they must have some way of getting, unless they just are fucking zooming, they could be.
I mean, if
possible.
you had an eternal pose to like to an island that was like kind of like you could kind of bypass all the other, like you could potentially like go really fast, but
you'd risk going into the calm belt if you're like, if depending on how far away it is, like if you're on the other side of the world.
I'm sure you could set it up that you have like a certain number of eternal poses that like fast track you, but yeah, potentially if you could go through the calm belt, we know that the Marines can go through the calm belt. Who's to say that like the emperors among these pirates haven't figured out how to get through the calm belt? They can cut the fucking atmosphere in half. Like, do they really need to be afraid of sea kings? Like,
I mean, apparently, like it depends on how like. The calm belt has been built up with the Sea Kings. It's like it's where all of the crazy ones are, like it's a fucking nest of them. That's just like, it's half water, half Sea King over there. But but we've been talking about that before, like whether Mihawk and Shanks perhaps, or these higher level people, whether the calm belt even matters to them. Because that's like a huge restriction. And, we've talked every time we talk about this, we mentioned like, the rules are meant to be broken. Whenever you set up something like that, it's like, it's set up for, a big stop sign is like an opportunity for somebody to run the stop sign, basically. It's literally an opportunity to show a different level of power or a different sort of plateau of power or understanding of the world. So I think it's probable, as judging by where we are, how we've been going, and Shanks' power level, that they're probably zipping around from sea to sea, probably not giving a fuck about the comm belt. They could go anywhere, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There's another question from R, who asked, what are your thoughts on the lore drops in the post-Ennies Lobby and how they handled Luffy's family tree being revealed? Garp's introduction as Luffy's grandpa, and, you know, obviously Dragon and stuff, as well as setting up the future with Shanks and Whitebeard and Ace and Blackbeard.
I don't know.
I feel like I liked it. I wasn't expecting. Here's the thing. I wasn't expecting all of that to be revealed, because obviously we knew that Luffy's grandpa was Garp. So then when Garp shows up, we're like, okay, this is the moment for the reveal. And then he instantly drops Luffy's dad reveal at the same time, which I was not expecting at all, which was crazy. And then we, you know, immediately move back into like, oh, then now Shanks and Whitebeard are meeting up. And then Ace and Blackbeard are having this epic battle. And it's like, I felt like I was not expecting so much to happen, like back to back to back, right after we just had a crazy thing. Because then we kind of had this moment where we were like chilling out and it was fun. And even with Garp, it was fun. And then it's just like, oh my God, this is getting crazy. And I feel like we've had other moments like after other arcs where we're like, oh, Doflamingo's doing something, or you know, Blackbeard's over here. But like, I feel like this now is like heating up, especially because it's Ace, who is like obviously Luffy's brother
And one of our favorite characters.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then we also find out that Dragon is Luffy's dad, and like, you know, assumingly also Ace's dad.
But
so like,
no, that's the thing, because his name isn't Monkey D. Ace.
oh,
His name is Portugas D. Ace, and he has freckles and different eye shape.
yeah, I guess I didn't think about that. Anyway, so I guess maybe not, but he is still Luffy's brother. So
Did we hear Garp talk about Ace? I don't think we did.
I thought that he said something about like, oh, first Ace and now you or something. But maybe
Okay, well, if he did, well then that
maybe he did, but I can't.
well, because
remember.
it's still like the comments pointed it out, and like, or drew my attention to this, that like we figured, oh well, we thought that Garp was a girl dad.
Yeah, we just assumed that.
And then it's like, oh well, I guess it's just Dragon's dad, but maybe not.
I thought that he had said something. I thought that we thought that for a reason, that we were like, oh, he must not be a girl, because I was 100% sure
that he was
based on no
a girl
evidence
dad.
that he was a girl
He
dad.
seems like a girl dad, and I feel like that's probably intentional, or
But I thought that he had said something about his son, or like one of the Marines had been like, oh, isn't your son like
I don't
also
think
this
they
or something?
said it in those words. I think
maybe
that
not.
it's like, but it's because it's Monkey D. Garp and it's Monkey D. Dragon, which is weird if it wasn't his son. But if Garp was also taking care of Ace, and Ace is not Dragon's son, because it's not the Monkey D, then what the fuck is going on with this tree? Because like, if Luffy and Ace are only half brothers, then, and Dragon is Luffy's is, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then Ace is the redheaded.
But then people were saying, yeah, but like that's why I didn't understand, because I was convinced based on nothing that.
What if Shanks is the redheaded stepchild? That'd be crazy.
Oh my God. I was convinced that Garp must be Luffy's mom's dad. I was convinced.
Maybe
of that.
maybe it is,
Here's
because
the
maybe
thing.
Dragon
'cause
married
here's the-
in.
Well, because here's the thing
that can happen.
Because like and then based on what we saw, I can't remember exactly what, but I thought that there was something that we were like, okay, I guess
It
that theory's
seems
out the
concrete,
window.
but yeah, but that's what I'm saying is then the comments illuminated me that like it's not
But
apparently
they didn't actually say
that it's not so concrete as that. It's like they say it, but in so many words. So it's like it's still up in the air.
Yeah.
And because of Ace being in there, having a different name and looking slightly different, like we talked about with Robin, with our whole Robin is Roger's daughter theory, you know, with the hair being like, she looks like Olvia in every way except for her hair, because Olvia's hair is wavy and silver or white, and then Robin's is black and straight. So those are the only two traits are things that say Gold Roger have, and if she's all in this Poneglyphs thing,
Yeah.
and Roger is all looking for, like there's potential connections there. The timeline lines up. So when we were talking about parentage, we mentioned that's a very significant detail because they show Olvia as an example of like the traits that she has from her, but there's these two things that are clearly separate. So you could apply that to Ace as well, and that's the freckles and kind of similar face shape and nose. Like I guess like there's some things that are different.
Yeah, we know based on like especially Usopp because he's I think like maybe the only person that we've like fully seen both of his parents.
Usopp was a good
it's like I am going to take this off of this person and like this off of the other person and like
Usopp looks like his dad except for the nose and the hair.
Like they're like a 1-to-1. Like they are mostly a copy paste of this person, but with like these two aspects of this other person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So all that to say, with this situation is something I don't know what it is, but Ace and Luffy, if they're half brothers, they probably share the same mom. Maybe Luffy's mom is Portugas D, or maybe Ace's dad is Portugas D. We don't know because it could be an Elric brothers situation where Ace just like, you know what, fuck you, I choose to take my mom's name, but Luffy took his dad's name because it was Dragon or something. That like the Luffy's mom thing is, I feel like is one of those things that is set in stone, is being walked around by Oda. It's clearly being walked around, and I don't know why. It's either somebody we know or
it's like something that will click everything
together.
It's if we see her, then
it's
we
this
will know.
nexus piece that like connects maybe Roger or Shanks and Ace and Luffy and Garp.
The original cuck theory.
I feel like the cuck theory is still possible.
I feel like the cuck theory is definitely still possible, but we also
because that would be Luffy's grandmother.
Exactly.
So
it was Garp that got cucked.
Yes. Which would make sense maybe, well, that, maybe the cuck theory's still, maybe it's still plausible because if Dragon married into the Monkey D family, maybe Dragon married into the Monkey D family to gain the name D because that would give him some sort of a power boost. I mean, you would, wouldn't you?
I thought that was more
Luffy
like a
did, and he's born. Yeah, I don't think so. I think the D is supposed to be hereditary as well. Like it's.
I thought it was like everyone in our family has the same middle name.
Garp, Dragon, Luffy. I mean, like it's a name.
Yeah, but like also Gold Roger has like the D, and it was like, and according to what's her face, Doctor Lady, she was like, oh yeah, it used to be a thing that people would have Ds, and that giant guy had the D. So like it's not just their family, it's more like maybe there was once like an island where everyone had
not necessarily their family, but like I think in this case when we're what we're talking about here is the parentage and like I
guess I'm wondering like though because it's like a thing that's passed down, so I don't know if you, I guess my question is if you married into a family that had the D, would you get the D?
Well, that's I don't know. I'm not sure if it's I don't know, but I think I'm just saying with this interpretation that Garp is still possibly a girl dad and Luffy's mom is like this nexus piece that maybe fits in a lot of things together. And Dragon is like, if he is, because he like Dragon, I guess Dragon strikes me, he's like very ambitious. He has big dreams of like toppling the world government. Clearly he's revolutionary. He's fucking out there changing the world. He clearly has serious goals and he requires serious power. I think if somebody was trying to gain a lot of power and say he didn't have the Monkey D name, unless he is actually like, again, this all is born. Like I guess it's kind of a faux pas with theory crafting because we're assuming a lot of things based on a unlikely possibility. Because we're assuming that maybe that maybe he tried to get the D, and that's why he married Luffy's mom, who is Garp's daughter, who had the D, took her name, then achieves the D, then has the power of the D. Like that's a lot of, I understand it's a lot of assumptions, but that's the assumptions I'm making if Garp is Luffy's mom's dad. Like those are the kind of things we have to do, because otherwise why would Dragon be Monkey D Dragon?
Yeah. Unless he already had the D.
Unless they're siblings. Like unless he had the D already, yeah. But the Garp, but it's Monkey D. It's Monkey D. Like those are connected. I don't know if the Monkey D is a separate thing, if there's like a dynasty of the Monkey Ds. I doubt it, but it's like I don't know how it all fits together. We don't know enough about what the D is to like figure all the shit out. But it is just like think about it's just a name. Maybe it's fully a superstition. It could be. It seems to be related somehow to like the idea of a devil fruit.
Or like a destiny or like
destiny, yeah.
Chosen one kind of vibe.
I don't know. I don't think there's a way to know. These are just a million possibilities. Because like, I guess it's just, I guess it's all like, okay, basic rundown is Garp, sun is dragon, son is Luffy, and Luffy's mom had another kid before Luffy. So before meeting Dragon, she had a kid with somebody else, and that is Ace. Somehow Shanks fits into there somehow, because Shanks is only a few years older than Ace, I think.
Yeah, I think Shanks is like relatively young.
We don't know how, and that's another thing that's being danced around here. Is because we don't know the relationship exactly between Ace and Shanks, because Ace left 3 years before Luffy. We saw Luffy as a kid. If Luffy knew Shanks and was on the terms with Shanks as they were, and Ace only left 3 years earlier to go be a pirate and then joined Whitebeard's crew, there's something between Ace and Shanks. There has to be some kind of relationship.
If you already knew Shanks, like either Shanks was like, no, you can't join my crew, or like he just didn't want, like if you already knew a pirate, like if you were going to go and like join a pirate of the caliber of Whitebeard, and you already knew Shanks.
I would imagine there might not be a bad blood thing. There might be. It's probably like a little competitive thing, like how Luffy went to be his own pirate
instead of being
in order to like kind of measure up to Shanks in a way. He's like inspired by him. He wants to follow in his footsteps in a way. That's like his dream, and Shanks informed that dream. So like he wants to go do that and make his own crew. He's going to be king of the pirates, etc., etc. Why Ace wouldn't do that after meeting Shanks, possibly be inspired by the same way, but I feel like these are the questions that we're going to get answers to eventually, because like Ace or Shanks gave up his arm for Luffy. He didn't give his arm up for Shanks, and Shanks gave his arm up for Luffy. Shanks did not give his arm up for Ace, who left 3 years earlier to go do this, basically the same thing. Not the exact same thing. He's joining a different crew, but you see what I mean? Like there's a connective tissue. We're missing key fragments that are like, that will change our understanding of all this. I don't think we're gonna get them right away. We might get some of them soon, depending on how this all works out with Ace. But like, yeah, the relationship with Shanks and Ace, I feel like will place Shanks rather with Garp or with that whole kind of thing, because like Luffy was being raised by Garp to be a Marine, or to as we learned from the live action, and was being like trained for that, and then ran away to go be a pirate. I guess ran off to that bar. We don't know how far he got or how he got there, whether he got there by boat or whether he was just inland at their like ancestral home or something. We don't know. There's a few details that would make things a lot easier. But like the fact that everyone's telling us that it's not so concrete that Garp is Dragon's dad, and the fact that they don't look that much alike, they kind of do. Yeah. Luffy, like Dragon looks like an old smoker Luffy, like a real life smoker, not like the character. Like he looks like an old bedraggled, grizzled Luffy, but like, and Luffy looks like Garp, but Garp doesn't look like Dragon. So if we're following that kind of parentage thing, if we're following that kind of parentage thing that we talk about with Usopp and possibly Robin, and what we're talking about with Ace, then it seems likely that maybe the through line between Garp and Luffy is not Dragon, who doesn't look like Garp, but through Luffy's mom, who we don't know who it is.
And Luffy's mom, but because I feel Luffy and Ace look a lot alike, and I feel like they look so alike to each other that they must look a lot like their mom.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like their mom must look very similar to them, because I feel like they kind of look like Garp. Luffy, like, doesn't really look like Dragon to me. Like, I'd have to maybe look at him again. But, like, he doesn't, like, jump out as, like, oh, the first time I saw him, I instantly knew he was Luffy's dad because they looked the fucking same. You know what I mean?
The first time. But this, when we saw him in this other flashback with the hood down, he looked with the kind of, like, stringy looking hair that kind of Luffy has.
Yeah, but he doesn't look like this spitting image of him, which leads me to believe that, and because Luffy and Ace look like very close to identical almost, I feel like they must look a lot like their mom, which is also why, I feel like their mom reveal is going to be maybe big if they if they really like take after her, potentially also take after her in terms of like spirits or something, because like, Dragon is over there like running a revolution. He's not like just having fun and being king of the pirates.
So what would Luffy's mom, what's like the feature of both Ace and Luffy that Dragon doesn't have? Because that they both share.
Nose, does he?
I feel like Luffy in the face.
Well, it's also like the very
round face, and I think ears. Because I don't think Dragon had big ears, like how they both have like the big wide ears.
I think Ace also has just like the plain like black eyes.
So does Dragon.
Oh, does he? I can't.
They might look similar.
I can't fully remember exactly what he looks like just on memory.
I mean, honestly, maybe fucking. Oh, do we know if what the doctor, the devil fruit doctor's name is? I forget their name. But did they say it was a man? What if it was a woman? And Luffy is actually like he wouldn't have been able to eat a devil fruit.
No,
never mind. I was gonna say, like, what if he is like a fucking object who ate the human fruit or something like that, and then ate if you eat 2 devil fruit, you explode. So
yeah,
apparently. So I don't know. There's a lot of I don't know where I land with all of this. I guess it all branches off from is Dragon actually Garp's son, or did Dragon marry into the family to get the D name? Does that somehow influence your fate or your destiny if you marry into it and take that name? Because and another wrinkle with that possible theory is the manga, not to get too political here or anything, but the manga like phallogocentrism in a way. Like how, if like I imagine the wife of Garp probably took Monkey D as an, you know what I'm saying? Like when a woman would marry in, it would be probable that they would take like the last name. Maybe it would just be Monkey. Maybe it wouldn't be the D, we don't know. And I feel like that's a detail that might be being kept out obviously as well. But like, it's such a thing to consider in terms of power scaling or in terms of the way the universe works, to think, what if Dragon could take the D through marriage? Mm-hmm. It's such a weird thing to say. What if Dragon could take the D in marriage from his wife? That seems like it's unlikely. But then when we think of a wife marrying a man named Monkey D. Dragon, then getting the name.
I guess my thing is, I wonder, like, I guess I was always thinking of it of like, you could take their last name but not the D, and the D would be passed to children potentially regardless. So like,
that's probably likely.
Say Luffy's mom, say Luffy's mom, forget that we know Dragon exists. Say Luffy's mom had the D last name, but then she married someone else, or she had the D. Her kids would potentially have the D, even if they had a different last name of her potentially. Mm-hmm. Would be my thoughts anyway.
Okay, I was just looking up to see if it actually was Monkey D. Dragon, because that would be so dumb if we were just talking about this for so long. It was Monkey D. Dragon. It is Monkey D. Dragon.
Okay, yeah. Because I guess my thing is that a thing that would be more likely? You can share your last name in a marriage, but you don't share the D. But that goes to your children, irregardless of which parent had the D.
I mean, so far, 3 generations of people. I guess like.
But I'm also saying we also haven't seen a woman with a D name.
That's
at
true.
All.
That would be this would be a problem with the theory of Robin being Roger's kid. That would invalidate that theory. is this idea that
But at the same time, there's also the weird thing where he's known as Gold Roger and not Gold D
oh,
Roger.
true. So
if
in like
he
the
didn't
secretive,
even know his own.
I think he did know. It's just that.
But if he didn't know he had a kid,
oh, true.
then if someone else didn't know, okay.
I mean, she would know, and
no, but I'm saying like, okay, say you were a random woman. You bang Gold Roger and get pregnant. He's gone. You already didn't know that his name was Gold D Roger. You just thought it was Gold Roger.
I figure people at that time probably did know.
I guess Kureha just talked about it of like, oh, but she's
is
like,
that what
she's
he's called
so
now?
old though.
Dalton was young. Dalton was in his like 20s, I thought, or maybe he was 30.
I didn't think.
Well, he's in a far off kingdom. You know, most people don't know. I guess you're right.
But I guess the thing is like I feel like it would take longer than like 20 years to be like, oh yeah, he's just Gold Roger, and like Shank, like you know what I mean? Like there's still most people alive, if he had been known as Gold D Roger, would probably still call him that, you know? Mm-hmm. In my thoughts, at least.
I don't know. The D is, I think.
Well, and also if you didn't know if that was part of their last name, like say, like just based off our random like Robin being Gold Roger's kid theory, it's like if you were the mom naming your kid, you might not know that like if you didn't know about the D, even if you knew that their name was Monkey D. Luffy, you might be like, oh, that's their middle initial.
Yeah.
I will just name them not that.
Well, that's what I'm trying to parse out or trying to find a way to say is like, we don't know if it's actually a middle name. It by our conventions, it seems like it is, but the D doesn't stand for anything. It's just D.
Yeah.
Because when somebody's named Dragon, that's not a D, and if he writes down his initials, suddenly he's magic. You know, like that's not how it works. It's the D. It's just a D with a period. That's it. It's not like, so that's what I mean about like, you know, passing down or marrying into it, because it doesn't seem to be actually a middle name. It's just at the end, like it's in the middle of their name, but we don't know if it's a middle name or if that concept even a Japanese thing. Like it was, you know,
and
like,
I mean it's in the middle, but also when the last name is first, is it like after
well, and it's
their last name?
When it's spelled out phonetically. Well, that's they're still using the surname given name. But like, I don't know. I don't think they have middle. Now that I think about it, I don't think they have middle names in Japanese. I know that Oda has taken care to familiarize himself with different, you know, naming conventions and languages and stuff like that to name his shit. That's obvious. It's something that we've talked about and praised him about previously with the series, where he, you know, they're not just like using English words to sound cool like a lot of other series do, and they actually don't mean anything. He thinks of the meaning of the word. He maybe learns about different other applications of that word or things that sound like it or have a different like etymology, or like, you know, he thinks about those things and he considers them when he uses like Romanized alphabet words. But I don't know if this is a case of that. I don't know if he's using that like confusion to his advantage. I don't know if it's something that he codified, then thought about later. We don't know.
Yeah,
it seems to me, with the way that it's been used and with the way that the world has gone so far, with all the people we've met, D doesn't seem to be a middle name. It just seems to be a part of their name.
Yeah.
Probably.
I guess I just wonder, like, if you wrote it out, like, first name, middle name, last, like, if it would be Luffy D Monkey or if it would be Luffy Monkey D.
I think Monkey D is a thing, because you also have to think about, again, Japanese, I don't think have the same middle name thing that we have. And also they, you got to think about like the phonetic spelling of like of like how it would be in katakana in like, you know, translated. It would just be like spelled out phonetically like that's so, like Monkey D Doofy, you know, like it would just be like that. So it's like, I don't know, like it's written out like with a D period again. So like that's a decision that that it looks like a middle initial. That's not an accident. Mm-hmm. So, you know, as like, I guess what we're trying to do is like use our knowledge of language or like, you know, outside of the series kind of reverse engineer what a Japanese person would think of a different country, of a different culture's naming scheme, use that, but also use the Japanese like surname first thing.
Yeah.
So it's difficult even to parse out outside of the series with knowledge of like, I guess, like linguistics or whatever you would say. I don't know. And there's the truth is there's no way to know, and there's too many conflicting things as far as
and we've
that
seen
shit.
Somehow a lot of people with the D, but also like not enough. Like I said, we haven't seen any women with the D, so we don't know whether
Have
like,
we not?
I don't think so, because we've seen like Roger, Garp, Ace, Dragon, Luffy, and Saul.
I guess we haven't.
Because I feel like if we, you know what I mean? Like if like that would maybe like clear the air. Like maybe it's a thing like only guys can have
Maybe.
that. Maybe it's like a father to son kind of deal, or maybe it's not. But maybe we haven't seen that either.
Again,
because of a reveal that
exactly.
Again,
this like walking around Luffy's mom.
Even
type
if you're a woman, you do pass it to your husband because your name is fucking cooler than his, and he can fuck off if he doesn't want the D. Mm-hmm. So, you know, like, I feel like either, like, you know, I don't know, I think, like, we talked about Naruto a million times, but it's like, in Naruto, women don't really get cool stuff because the series is, like, biased against them.
Well, it's not that it's biased against
it's
women, it's biased for the readership,
yeah.
which is mostly boys, and because
yeah.
it's the genre of shonen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for a shonen magazine, read by boys, made by, you know, nerdy-ass dudes who just been drawing pictures their whole lives.
Yeah.
So, like, it's natural that it has sort of this tendency towards boys and is likely to be influenced by editors to point it even stronger in that direction because it'll sell better, or it's more guaranteed to sell more. Not that it necessarily would sell less with a more womanly shit, but it's less likely to sell less if they make it like that. So that's a common with Naruto. That's why we see a lot of shit wrong with Naruto. Also because Kishimoto has admitted that he just doesn't know how to write women. But
I guess my thing is like, obviously, you know, like people like Nami are not as like cool, but One Piece does have really cool female characters. And I don't feel that same, like, everything is the father son, everything is the brother. Like, it doesn't have like that.
It's not as strong.
It's not as strong. It's in Naruto, it's like everyone is either your like father or your brother, and those are like the connections. Like, even if they're not related to you, that's
every
how
character is either a Naruto, a Sasuke, or a girl, and their girls are basically all the same.
So, but it's like there's a lot of the world revolves around the main character, and the way it revolves through the paternal line and through brotherly connections is the way that world operates for most of it. So, but I don't get, there's not that strong of that influence. Like, there's still obviously, I mean, like, we literally have the reveal of Garp's dad and grandpa, but it seems like Luffy's mom isn't being shown, and I hope at least that Luffy's mom isn't being shown not because she's a woman and therefore not important, but because there's a cool reveal that will be associated with his mother. I genuinely,
like, I'm not normally super hopeful about this for the reasons you just described, because of the genre specifications and because of just the nature of these types of stories. Like, it's just, you know, it has a bias and a tendency towards men. It's not that even that it's against women. It's just that it's towards men, and in some cases that is, you know, a difficult thing if you're a female reader, or if you like female characters more generally, and you don't, like, you know, you could say whatever. Anyway, like, there are plenty of manga and anime about female main characters, but they're usually a lot less complex than like their male counterparts, especially if you're talking about 2000s and prior. But what I was going to say is, yeah, I feel the same way. I usually would tend towards that, like, more cynical outlook and more like hesitant perspective. But I think genuinely in this case, there's too many tendrils, and it seems more intentional. It seems less like something that's being forgotten and more like
Yes.
something that's being avoided on purpose.
Yes, it's being like shrouded in mystery.
And
Or,
maybe
like,
it won't be the huge fucking explosion,
No,
but
but
I feel like it'll put a lot of things into perspective
yes.
because of, Ace and Luffy's relationship, how
Especially-
Shanks fits into
yeah.
that, how Dragon fits into that. There's like all these things that are kind of around this central piece. It's like,
Especially if Ace does have a different dad. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he just changed his name out of like hatred or something. Like maybe because like if Dragon was also Ace's dad, then maybe Ace would be like, oh, I'm really pissed at you for leaving. Like if Luffy just never knew him, then that's one thing. But if he left Ace as like a four-year-old kid, then he might be like, fuck you, I don't want your name,
Yeah.
And like that's something. But also, like, if he does have a different dad, then it's like, okay, but then Ace is still super powerful and still did all this crazy stuff, even though he's not related to Dragon and or potentially Garp, But he's still related to Luffy, and they're both extremely, like, talented and special in their own ways. So, like, what's the connecting factor? It would still be their mom,
Yeah.
But then it's like...
yeah, I don't know.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's there's a few different, like, I feel like we need to get like the whiteboard out with like the characters' faces and then like drawing lines between them and seeing like the different possibilities, because like both dads would have to have the D. One would be Portugas D something for Ace's dad, Monkey D Dragon.
unless you can't take the D from the mom regardless.
Well, hang on. Then the mom would be nobody in that case if it was Garp, Dragon, Luffy. But if it's Garp, daughter, Luffy, Dragon marries in, takes Monkey D name, then Portugas D is a separate thing. Like there's different ways that this can move around, and I feel like once we find out Luffy's mom's name, it'll
reveal.
Yeah, because if it's Portugas D Lady, whatever her name is, and she's not related to Garp, and it is just Garp, that would simplify things a lot. And then then Dragon leaves. And then Ace is like, fuck you, I'm taking my mom's name. And she's also a D. Maybe Dragon, revolutionary guy that he is, his dad was a Marine hero. Let's step off the theory fucking insanity for a second. Just consider like a more conventional type of prediction. Garp, Marine hero. He's gone down as like a Navy hero. Maybe. Because the Navy works for the world government, what Garp did wasn't so great. And he's actually a fucking monster. Or he did monstrous things, and that's why he's so nice now. It's because he's trying to make up for it. Dragon saw his dad doing all that fucked up shit and was like, I hate this. I'm going to be a revolutionary and try to take down all this stuff because my dad was trying to train me to follow in his footsteps, and he is a monster. He's done terrible things. I hate this. I'm going to set things up for the future better. So I'm going to become revolutionary. I'm getting old. I'm probably going to die in battle or in some kind of raid or something. I need to have kids so they can carry on my will. I know about the Will of D. What happens if Will of D marries Will of D person, Portugas D woman, whatever her name is, Portugas D mom, Monkey D Dragon, Portugas D mom, bang, have Ace. Ace has history repeats itself, hates Dragon because Dragon's more concerned with what he's doing for his job. Again, playing into that Japanese salary man. Dad's never home. He's always taking the train to Tokyo. He's hanging out with all of his mistresses after he gets out of the office. He's always drinking, mom's cooking, leaving a plate for him in the fridge type thing. That sort of classic Japanese story. That's like how Naruto's always Hokage and he's like, Boruto hates him because he never comes home. That's like a common Japanese fucking thing that happens. So it could be like imitating life. So just like how Dragon hated Garp, his dad, for being thing that, things he didn't like, maybe Ace hated his dad because dad left him and baby Luffy. And then Shanks comes along as a kind of a father figure, or maybe as this literal redheaded stepchild. Maybe he's like in the family some way from a previous marriage or something. And then he gets inspired by Ace or by Shanks to go off. And then he's like, fuck that guy. I'm going to take my mom's name and then leave. And that's Portugas D Ace. Mm-hmm. And they're not actually half brothers. They're full brothers. Mm-hmm. Then Luffy's born. Everybody's gone. He doesn't know anything. Garp is just like kind of devastated, pretty sad that probably his daughter or his daughter-in-law's dead or left or something. Son's off being a major criminal. And his first grandson, who showed a lot of promise, is really powerful, is just the rebel that his own son was, and now his grandson's going off to be a pirate as well. But he can't really blame him because he did all this fucked up shit in the past. He's gonna train Luffy now to be an even better kid, and train him to be really good, but not really realizing that he's falling into the same footsteps that he did with the previous two guys. Then Luffy grows up, goes with Shanks, goes off to be a pirate, and now he's trying to do the same thing, but instead with Kobe.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the cleanest version without all the weird marriage shit.
Yeah, well, because if it was like if Dragon did marry into that and take if Garp was Luffy's mom's dad, then it could also be whatever, maybe his daughter, same thing where she rebels, goes off, gets with this revolutionary guy, and then they're worked up in all of that. They had these kids and stuff, and then she is because she's not around. We don't know what happened to her. It's was she dying? Did she get sick? Did something happen when
the way Oda likes to repeat shit? It seems like she's probably dead.
Yeah,
Robin's mom's dead. Usopp's mom's dead.
So my whole thing is did she go marry Dragon to be a rebel, but then things got too serious and then she couldn't trust Dragon to take care of her kids? This is
Garp's daughter now.
Yes.
Okay, in this scenario.
Because you went through the whole other one, so now I'm just giving an alternate thing. So she runs off with Dragon, who's this rebellious guy, takes her name, does all this stuff. Eventually, as she has these kids, then something goes wrong. Either she gets sick or she gets hurt or something goes wrong with this whole them revolutionizing things together. She goes back home to entrust her children to her dad and then dies.
Yeah.
Or takes off to do something else. She's probably dead, but she could also not be dead. She could have gone off and done something, she could have found something out and then gone off in a different direction to do something as just another option, depending.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think likely she's dead, probably, because Luffy already has a bunch of family members that are alive, and they're all dudes. Yeah. So I think that she's probably dead again because usually the mom dies in One Piece so far. Belmare, although Belmare died a little bit later, but Olvia died a little bit later, I guess. Usopp's mom died a little bit later, I guess. Maybe she died. Maybe she died right before Shanks showed up. Maybe that's why he clinged on to Shanks so much.
Yeah, maybe Ace is Shanks' kid, even though he's not that much older. But maybe he's older, and then that's why he's "Oh, Luffy, I love you because I loved your mom, even though my own secret affair."
Maybe Shanks is the younger brother of Luffy's mom.
Actually, I had been thinking that, but then we were still talking, so I forgot.
Oh, sorry.
But yeah, I was also thinking that of if he sees, if he knew Luffy's mom and that he sees Luffy's mom in Luffy, and that's why he is helping him like that.
Mm-hmm. He's not old enough to be a childhood friend of Luffy's mom. He's he would be old enough to be a younger brother or I don't know, the kids in Usopp's village to Usopp type thing.
Yeah. Or
we don't. Yeah, it'll depend.
It's hard to determine his age, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like if her name is Portugas mom, that'll put into perspective the D thing a lot, because maybe women literally can't have the D.
Yeah, or if her name gets revealed and it's Monkey D, then it just throws us into this exact same discussion.
Well, then that clarifies it a lot. That clarifies it a lot.
That someone got it through marriage.
Exactly. Then and whether or not it has a magical property at all, first of all, whether it has an actual magical property at all is up for debate. It seems to, based on what people have said, but whether or not that's just superstition is up for debate. But say it does, we won't know if it does through marriage. But it'll narrow things down to either Dragon got it through marriage or she got it through marriage.
Yeah.
But you can get it through marriage, and women can also get it. So that'll be two facts to learn.
Yeah.
If she has Monkey D, if it's Portgas, If it's just Portugas,
Then
lady, that will say women can't
yeah.
get it.
Or at least you can't get it through marriage.
And that it's not Garp's daughter.
Yeah.
So like that it won't give us a lot of clear answers, but it'll give us it'll narrow down everything a lot. Yes. Yeah.
The other thing that I was thinking of, like, because we were talking before about, you know, the whole Robin potentially being Roger's secret child or something theory, I was thinking as well, because like we talk about like the D and how it's like, oh, you're kind of like, it's like a good thing to have the D name, or you're going to do something like really good, you know? And then I was thinking, like, I mean, Saul kind of got like turned into ice, and that's a pretty horrific end. But at the end of the day, he saved Robin. So if Robin is like this, like, you know, very important person that is going to do like really good stuff later on, then you know what I mean? I don't know. I was just thinking about that of like, because like Roger has the D and he like was the king of the pirates, and Garp has the D and he's like this famous like war hero kind of guy. You know what I mean? I don't know. I was just thinking about it.
I don't know. I think that we had a lot. I feel like we hit a few points of probably scary accuracy, and then probably 90% garbage, but interesting garbage. I hope. But that's all we try for all the time.
If you guys didn't know what came next.
Yeah.
You would have thought we were cooking. We were Sanji in here.
If this was whatever 19 years ago or whatever it would be, then we'd be fucking on fire right now. But I guess we can end it there. Is there any other questions? Did we forget anything? I'm trying to remember. I don't want to like leave. I feel like there was one discussion where it was like, what? We didn't talk about Luffy's fucking fight, or we didn't talk about, you know, the villain of the arc. Did we talk about Lucci? We didn't talk about Lucci. That's what it was. Give it a good slap. Ow. Okay. So, as we were saying, God, I just hate fucking Rob Lucci. He's so boring. No, I'm just kidding. Was there a question about Lucci? Or was there no questions about Lucci?
There was, but I didn't screenshot it because I was like, oh no, what if
I just shit on Lucci the whole time?
Well, I didn't, because you didn't want to get too negative. So
I'm not. I don't think I'm even that. We're not even that negative about Lucci.
No, we aren't. Rachid Ildebar. No, there's no L in there. I can't say.
Sound it out.
Ildebar. What do you think about Rob Lucci as a character? A lot of people write him off as one-dimensional, but I believe his concept of dark justice stands out among One Piece villains.
Yeah, it definitely stands out amongst One Piece villains. Is he one-dimensional? I feel like a lot of people. What's that sound? I feel like the reaction to like our kind of making fun of him. People think that we think he's like fully one-dimensional. Or that we just don't understand his character.
Yeah, I think it was people thought that we didn't understand.
We understand it just fine. We just thought it was really edgy, and like that caught us by surprise. And because it's extremely edgy.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
It's like look at his childhood design. He looks like the edgiest person that you could ever imagine.
But that doesn't mean we don't like it. Like
no,
but I'm
gonna make fun of it a little bit, even if I like it. To be honest, because it's kind of
it's just an extremely extreme way to go about what they're saying, and like the whole dark justice thing. Like it's interesting, but that doesn't mean it's not edgy and extreme for what the story's normally about, and for what even for what was being said. I feel like it was very extreme. But that doesn't mean it's not effective, and that doesn't mean that it didn't say what it was trying to say. Like, I feel like a lot of people were like, you guys just don't get it. It's like, no, we get it just fine. We just aren't, and a lot of people also, a lot of people were upset that we also just didn't think it was really cool. And it's like, I think Lucci's pretty cool. I think his design as a kid is pretty cool. I think he's badass. But that doesn't mean that it's not over the top edgy. You know, it can be both.
I don't think that it made him necessarily cooler to it was interesting to see his backstory. I don't think, like, for me, I already thought that he was pretty cool. To me, it didn't, it wasn't like, oh, I thought he's all right, and then I saw his backstory, and then I'm like, wow, he's so cool and interesting now. I already thought that he was cool and interesting and threatening. So seeing the backstory, I was like, damn, he's, way edgier than I thought.
And I don't think he's one-dimensional. Well, one-dimensional. Let's break down what one-dimensional means. It means that there's the one aspect to the character. It's there for one purpose. Right? So, what's the purpose of Rob Lucci at this point of the story? And that's the other thing. He might be one-dimensional at this point in the story. That doesn't mean that there's nothing else to him. But his purpose right now is to be a really cool antagonist and rival to Luffy. Mm-hmm. That's his role. Whereas we look at somebody like Usopp. What's Usopp's role in it? Is Usopp one-dimensional in this arc of the story? No. He's got Soga King. He's there. He's there for many reasons. He has multiple dimensions to his role in the story currently. I think it could be argued that Rob Lucci is one-dimensional because his purpose, other than possibly setting up things that happen later, maybe, his purpose right now is to be a really cool bad guy that Luffy can fight. And to illuminate, I guess another purpose is he's illuminating a darker side and giving us a different perspective to look at the world government with, you know. So whether he's one-dimensional, I don't care about the label of it. That's not the point. But if you're like us and you don't think that was the coolest shit ever, just badassery, and I'm not suddenly I don't see him, I don't look at him the same way that I look at Itachi or something, in early Naruto, it's not that's not what I'm watching One Piece for necessarily. What I think about Rob Lucci is I think he is cool. I think he is cool. I think that it was interesting, his backstory. It just was over the top. He killed 500 people that he was there to aid.
Yeah.
And rescue, but instead of rescuing them, he killed them all.
And then went and did his job.
And then killed the pirates. So it's all meant, what's the purpose of that? It's the purpose is to illustrate, the depth of his character, his motivations, what he wants, and what he thinks. But all of that it has its own purpose. All of those things together, why show us his thought process, his motivations now at the point where they did, right after Luffy, basically beat him in the first, in the later part of that fight. It's to show us, the point of showing us his whole mindset and everything. It's to illustrate to the audience that he's not done yet, that there's more to his character than just cool guy ostensibly. It's there to say, Lucci up to this point was just really badass traitor assassin dude that's very feared. Here we see why people fear him and why he does the things that he does. But that's there to give us in the moment, as far as a scene thing. It's he's not done yet, and he's going to keep fighting, and he's still threatening, and he's not Luffy's not just going to beat him so easily. This is the kind of guy you can kill 500 people. He's ruthless. He is
he has his own sense of justice. He's because we saw before how he's doesn't really respect Spandam at all, but he's doing what he says, and you're why are you even working for this guy? Yeah. And I think the real it's really telling when people get this upset at us about something, or not everybody was even that upset. A lot of people just actually a lot of people were upset. People were upset.
People were a lot upset about this one.
Upset about Kaku, and then when it got to this point, they were
there's no hope. Yeah.
Yeah, they were like,
yeah.
mad.
So people get this upset when it's something, when there's something going to be later that's a big deal. So that tells me that he's going to play a big role later in the story. And we'll get more development toward, like, the fact that even just this question that we were asked about, like, him being one-dimensional, that, like, based on what we've seen, I don't feel like him, like, I'd say one-dimensionals, again, if you care about that kind of a label, then that seems a bit extreme. So I feel like the only reason you'd ask a question like that is if the character seems one-dimensional now and then becomes three-dimensional later, or, you know, people who are pessimistic might see him as one-dimensional now, but you see him as a little bit more. But again, I think most of it is informed by perhaps things that happen later.
I'm not really convinced that he would come. I mean, maybe he comes back, but I'm more thinking like people getting mad about
I think he's definitely going to come back.
I think that there might be more of this kind of idea of like a similar like edgy backstory of someone later, or like this dark justice kind of thing might come in even with a different character. So then it's like, oh, this is the first time that it's being like explored. Oh, we don't want you to miss it, because then when it's relevant later, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, like, maybe he will come back, but also
I just feel
like the similar idea that comes
maybe
back.
But I don't think people get this mad about an idea. People usually get this mad about a character that they like that's being kind of shit on. You know, like, people don't usually get this mad about, like, oh, you missed the concept. You missed the you know, like, the people don't really have a visceral reaction like they did in the comment section to an idea. They usually have, like, I feel like just based on the reaction, based on the questions we're being asked about it, it's going to, there's hints that there's more there, that there could be potential for a more developed character later on. I think that that Lucci is going to come back. Because maybe he was a fan favorite in the manga, because I think a lot of people thought his backstory was genuinely badass. They thought that he was cool. He's definitely a different vibe to a lot of One Piece characters, even the cool One Piece characters like Ace or Shanks or whatever. He's like the edgy emo, like, character in this. He's like kind of is similar to like when we got Sasuke's flashback for the first time. Similar thing. Not quite, you know what I mean though? Like, it's not quite the same, but it's like how when we saw Itachi kill all of the Uchiha and we were like, holy fuck, that's crazy. We could have had a similar reaction then of like, wow, what a badass. He killed auntie and uncle at the fucking, you know, whatever, the DVD rental store or whatever it is over there. It's like, what a crazy guy. He murdered all the children. What a fucking badass, you know? Like, you could have a similar situation there. I think it's like a similar kind of vibe where people on one hand were just pissed off that we didn't react, that like it was the coolest thing we'd ever seen because it's supposed to be cool. Mm-hmm. It was just a little bit over the top, but I think genuinely a lot of it, like, we've had this at other points before where it's like people are getting mad, and I think it's based on character development that we haven't seen yet. You know, this feels like kind of a ReZero-ish type backlash to me. That's fair. So I that's what I think, and you know, if people are going to get mad about things that we haven't seen, then there's nothing we can do about that, because they aren't actually watching for us or what we think or care about our fucking opinions at all. They just want people to and awe and like say wow at the pictures that they like. And, you know, I guess that's actually fair. That's what a reaction's kind of about. But it's I think that's, you know, that's what it is they're getting upset that we didn't do the and awe at the time that they wanted. And then didn't watch the discussion where we talked about this in depth, and then got upset that we weren't that we don't, and just didn't understand that we did talk about all the things they talked about, just not in the terms that they would like, or maybe, you know, maybe they didn't even watch it. So yeah. Anyway,
yeah. I'll have another question now from Fia, who asked, they asked a couple questions, but I'll pick this one. You often talk about Oda's ability to improvise. How planned do you think this saga was compared to the other ones?
I think this was more planned, definitely. It seems like as he spends more time with the series, he's thinking... I feel like what might happen is he thinks of things that he wants to do, and then he doesn't get to do them for the next arc.
Yeah.
So then he keeps them and they sit in the oven for a little bit longer, and then those compound. And then eventually, like now that we're further into the series after a long time, he has a stockpile of those things that he's been able to connect to the other ideas he hasn't used and to the ideas that he has used. And now we're getting to see the fruits of that sort, like that everything's starting to come out and multiplying, basically.
We've talked a lot, especially pre-Skypiea, even like with Skypiea a bit, of like how every arc, it was almost like when you looked back, the previous arc or the previous few arcs have been like first draft. Like if he was writing a novel, those wouldn't have existed, and those would have been like reformed into an even more complete version of like the final battle or something like Arlong Park. How there was a lot of things, everything before that. Oda seemed to have learned what he liked, what he didn't like, what he wanted to try out next. And he did that a few times. And then he had Arlong Park. And it was like, wow, he really learned from like what worked and what didn't work previously. And he made like the best version of that sequence of events that keeps happening. And then we go, Alabasta, and that's like a bigger version.
all the little islands before the little gardens.
And I'm not saying that he just doesn't know what he's doing and just like keeps writing bad stuff until he gets a good thing. I don't think that that's the case. I think it's that through writing One Piece, he has developed a lot as a writer and as someone who's building a story. And he's had a lot of practice. He's had a lot of practice. And we've seen the practice. We've seen him grow. And we've seen what he's doing. And now I feel like we are, like, and he does do weird stuff like Skypiea, I feel like was him taking a chance, him shaking up the story. Yeah. For me, not a huge fan. This, however, I feel like was him kind of a return to form, but now with things that he learned in Skypiea, things that he learned throughout the entire rest, things that he probably had just been thinking about on the side, things that he, like you said, maybe didn't get the chance to use before. Now it all came together in this arc to the point that I feel like pre-Water 7, if he had tried to do a reveal of like the CP9 reveal, if he had tried to do something similar pre this arc, I don't think that he had, and not that he's bad, but I don't think he had the skills or was focusing on the right things to be able to make that reveal work the way that it did. I feel like at this point he has the skills and the tools to be able to do the things that he really wants to do, and he can do it not right, but he can do it the way that he really wants to do it the first time, instead of having a few like, it's like you're building an airplane and you're like somewhat successful, and then suddenly you like build a jet. Like it's not that it was wrong the first time. Like I don't know how to say. Well, I don't want people to get like mad and be like, oh no, Oda's a genius. It's like he's really good, but he's getting better. Yeah, and that doesn't mean that he was the worst writer of all time when he started. It just means that
like a normal
now
person,
it's becoming more clear that his intentions and what he's putting out are aligning in a way that I can see he hit all the marks that he wanted to hit. I'm not seeing, like, previously I would see, like, oh, I can see what he wanted to do here, and it didn't quite hit. And then we get to the next arc, and we'd be like, oh, yeah, that was him, like, fully realizing this thing that he tried to do before, and it didn't quite line up. And that's also just the nature of manga and, like, writing week to week, is you don't get the chance to be like, oh, I'm going to do this. And then, like, a few months later, when you're, like, redrafting it, be like, oh, no, I'm going to change it and do it like this. Mm-hmm. So we kind of see it happening live, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I feel like because we saw, speaking of the CP9 reveal and like him doing that before he was ready, like before when he did it, like we kind of had a similar smaller version of that with Baroque Works, where whatever his name was, like that, like Whiskey Peak, that was like a similar, way smaller scale.
Yeah, and that was really good, but it was only good because it was so like.
But we saw how he kind of like that was, I mean, people, like we talk about every time we talk about it, we talk about the same thing, but like everyone points to Whiskey Peak as like, oh yeah, that time that one of the 3 times that Oda like, you know, was on the fly, just like doing shit, you know? And but in reality, if you take a close look at the series, it happens all the time. It's not always as egregious as like Whiskey Peak, where it's just like, oh, this person's a bad guy. Oh no, they're a good guy. This person's a good guy. Now they're a bad guy. Or, you know, this person acted like this archetype. And then, you know, I kind of need somebody in this archetype. I'm just going to make them into a different character and use this, you know, like he did that there, and he's done it before. But he was doing a similar kind of thing to the CP9 reveal. And he still did, like, people talk about, they did stuff like that there, like with the masks change, with the multiple times they did the same thing to go kill Iceberg. And it's like, didn't you do this yesterday? And now you're like, it's the same thing. It's like, that's kind of, he does that. But it wasn't nearly as obvious and like as, okay, you're just like shuffling things around last minute kind of.
And it felt like, even if it was
not like, that that's always wrong to do. It's just like sometimes it's clear, like, okay, I see the story is like, it's like the stairs in Hogwarts where there's like, oh shit, it goes over here and like that's kind of how it feels sometimes when you can see it. The idea is every story does that, but like some stories are better at hiding it. Some stories are better at like just hiding it or do it further in advance. And that's where we're at with Oda now, where if you compare CP9 and Whiskey Peak, it's like there were still elements of those similar things where things kind of shifted around a little bit. But the reveal hits so much harder because he probably learned from all those previous things. And probably with Robin, you know, in Alabasta as well, probably learned a little bit. And with Conus, if you think about it as well, like, oh, I sold you out type thing. Like double agent type, you know, it's not the exact same, but similar kind of ideas of betrayal. Like he had a lot of practice.
How am I going to do the biggest betrayal yet? And have it work out. And
he even, apparently from what people said, only one person, was it just Lucci? Or it was, he when the first masked person was there, I think somebody, don't quote me on this, but I think somebody said that it wasn't even decided who it would be.
Yeah,
he introduced all these characters and he didn't even know. So like it's still improv, but that's what we mean by like improv. Like it's all writing is improv. All writing doesn't
exist.
It's none of it's real. Sorry to break it to you, none of it's real. But like that's, you know, that's what practice can do. That's what like, and that's the most interesting part of One Piece for us, I think, is seeing how those things, other than when the story is actually just really good, like in Ennies Lobby and Water 7, you know, like when you're taken out of this like critical mind and like are actually swept away by the emotions, that's obviously better. But like it's very rewarding to see like the series grow, not only in like, oh, there's this many islands or the Red Line and the New World and all these names of things, but to see the storytelling sort of get woven in deeper and more complex.
And get better. And I like that because I feel like in some other series, I feel like things often start out very strong and then towards the end start to get very repetitive or very like streamlined or like bad, or everything is like just kind of like, okay, now you're doing this because what, like, you know, things, it's like, oh, things didn't quite line up how I wanted, so now I'm gonna do this, and that's the way it is now.
Or like not make a Naruto. Sorry,
I know. I was trying so hard to not
make a Naruto comparison. It does the other thing that say like a Song of Ice and Fire does, where I have all these big ideas, these big concepts, this huge world that's just expanding, and it grows. And it just gets too big, and then in order to tie everything back, you have to fucking clench it. You have to cut so many things off and try to tie branches together and try to make, but it just never will work because it's grown out of your control, and then it never ends. And that's what can happen otherwise. So either you are really good at building and can't collapse things at all, or you're also not good at collapsing but do it anyway, and then all these big concepts completely fall away and none of them mean anything, and it's all down to one or two guys, and then it gets tied up in a neat little bow that's just way too neat.
this was always destined to happen. You were literally the chosen one.
Or you're actually really skilled. Not that George R. R. Martin isn't really skilled, or not that Kishimoto isn't really skilled. They both have their strong points and weak points like anybody. But this is where I feel like One Piece, I'm starting to get the mindset of the people who really like it and who are like the hardcore diehards, is that it seems like, we'll see where time takes us, but it seems like it's neither of those, and it's actually going towards
it seems like
a cohesive
it's like it's
ending.
This,
It feels like it's going somewhere.
And I think that's the thing when people get mad at us because we're like, oh, he clearly made this up or he changed this. We believe that it was going in this direction, but he decided to do this, and
maybe we're right, maybe we're wrong.
Maybe we're not him. We're not watching over his shoulder, seeing what he's doing. We weren't there like 20 years ago when he was actually writing what was going on that we're watching now. But the main thing is that as people that are trying to dissect the story from writing perspective, we can tell, or at least can guess and make a somewhat educated guess of when things were maybe going in one way and it got changed to go in another way. And people, when we point that out, people seem to think that we're saying he's a bad writer because he didn't plan this and then changed his mind. But that's exactly the opposite, because that's what makes the story able to be so good and not turn into like these other things that we were mentioning. Is because if the story is getting too narrow for him, he'll throw something in and expand it back out. But he doesn't let it get too far. He is able to then, instead of the story like either going like that or going like that, it's like going like that.
He sets himself up for success, and I feel like people just get mad when you just view things.
And part of being a good writer
is
is able to adapt. If you write yourself into a corner, you could just say, oh no, now I'm in this corner forever. Or you could say, actually, a fucking gun ate a fruit.
Yeah.
And I mean, that wasn't a corner.
Well, that's the thing, is he doesn't write himself. That's what he does. He doesn't write himself into corners because he cleverly keeps the corners at bay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
with the devil fruit, with a gun ate a fruit, it's ridiculous. But it sets the tone up in his favor. It's stacking the deck in his favor so that he doesn't force himself into those corners. So that's what it is. It's not it's always a compliment when we're talking about the improvisation. If people think that it's wrong, but all of that aside, it's getting to the point now where we talked a lot. It felt like, he was thinking so far ahead, and then had a big moment far off in the distance. And then he would get close and then feel like, this isn't going the way that I wanted. Big reset. Everybody's going to have a camp night, and then we're going to like make a plan, and then everybody's going to scatter, and we're all going to have our jobs, and then we're all going to come together towards the climax, and that's going to be more in line with this bigger moment that I have projected out in the future. That felt like it was kind of his strategy. And it would like, or sometimes he would be, and that would be like halfway through the arc. The start of the arc would be like, here's a new place. Here's all these cool things that I have. Here's these ideas that I have. All right. Got the ideas. What's actually happening here? And then we'd like try to explore that. Now it's beginning to feel more like I find less of those moments where I'm like, I don't know about this. It feels more like it feels like we're hitting more of those big far off moments. It feels like more of the story consists of, and maybe he is improvising just as much or just as little as he was and nothing changed. Maybe he's just getting better at hiding it. I don't know. What I'm saying is the story feels more concrete. It feels like so far in this saga, it feels less like I can see him like tying this thing over here and like, oh wait, okay, that's pretty cool. Wait. Oh, I see. You tied, you set this up and then you did that. Okay, yeah, all right, I understand. Now it feels I'm actually getting taken by surprise. Mm-hmm. That's a big, I wasn't super surprised, like sometimes, but like I wasn't, whoa, I didn't see that coming at all, what just happened. That didn't happen a lot. This arc, it happened like 10 times more than it normally does. And that's a good thing. That shows that we're seeing that improvement. We're seeing everything kind of grow, and it's great to see. I think that to like narrow down the question, I feel like this arc was more planned, but I feel like just the execution of the planning was also better. I'm not saying that like other arcs weren't planned at all. I'm saying like just his ability to like match whatever was in his head, I think
was probably a lot better in this arc. And I also feel like in regards to like random like tangents, like he's not afraid to go in, like if he thinks of something, if like the image of something pops into his head, he seems like the kind of person who just puts it in the story.
Yeah.
But at the same time, also throughout this arc, like when there was those guys with like those like ball and chain things, like that got introduced and then it was kind of there, but it didn't take up more time. Like I feel like in a different arc, that would have been like a whole ordeal. Whereas in this one, it was like he introduced something and then was like, maybe that wasn't as good as I thought. We'll like wrap it up, but we're not going to dwell on it. And that seemed like a lot more in this arc, which made it flow a lot better, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
From Chocoboshi asked, there have been a number of character development and character defining moments in One Piece, especially in this saga. Which moment or which overall character progression plotline was your favorite or resonated the most with you?
I mean, it has to come down to either Robin or Usopp.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I think Usopp did more than Robin, but that doesn't mean I like Robin's less. I really like...
They were very different.
They were very different. I think that Robin's backstory was very illuminating, was very interesting, and gave us a lot to think about for the overall story. And it was a long time coming. It felt like a big catharsis because of all like the kind of stuff that I talked about earlier in the podcast with Robin and everything, and her character and her place in the crew. Mm-hmm. But I think that Usopp's, like, again, I kind of talked about this. I kind of said this already, but just the idea of inner conflict of hard decisions being made and then committed to until such time that they are overturned, you know, in a satisfying way. That commitment to that arc is very satisfying to me. So I'd say Usopp's was probably my favorite because of the stakes it had for the rest of the group. Not that Robin's didn't, but yeah. And also we got Sogeking. That was sick. Mm-hmm.
And a very similar question, but R asked, what do you think of Luffy's growth as a captain and a character up until now?
I've been thinking about this. Answer to the question is, it's good. I like it. Like I said, we kind of talked about this already. I love that Luffy made the decision. I love that it was hard for him, but I like that he stuck to it despite it being hard for him, and I like that he didn't go back on it. But I also like that he was compromising, that he handled the situation well, but it wasn't easy, and that's what I really like.
Yeah, I really like the struggle of that.
Yeah, but but it made me think about, and I guess the whole idea of Luffy and character development. It makes me question. Again, this is similar to how I think of like the Robin morality argument and that whole thing, is that it's not even really about Robin. It's just something that I think about. That's kind of how I see the Luffy character development thing. It's not even about Luffy and his character development, but it raises the question in my mind from a writing like perspective. Like if you're sitting down to write something, like is there a difference between character exposition and character expansion? Like is the character growing, or are we just seeing more of them? Does that make sense? Like,
yeah,
did this challenge Luffy and then he changed internally? He was one way before and now he's a different way after, or is this because that's what conflict does in stories. Mm-hmm. Was he one way before and now he's a different way after, and he learned and grew, or and the conflict brought about that change, or did the conflict give us the opportunity to see a different side of him that was there before and is there after? Mm-hmm. You know, that's a different thing, and it's two ways to do character development that I've been thinking about lately. There's a difference between a character growing and changing permanently and the audience seeing a different side to a character. You know, one's based on the perspective of the character, one's based on the perspective of the audience. Mm-hmm. Because a character can be the same before and after and still go through character development because they're developing as far as the audience's perspective is concerned. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the character's actual personality and growth, you know, character development, a character can develop and not grow if more of them is exposed to the audience. So that's what I mean by exposition, more of them being exposed, or expansion, more of them being expanded and growing. Mm-hmm. See what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's as far as it applies to that part of Luffy. I don't know which is the case. I think it's more exposition, meaning more of him is exposed to himself. But I don't think that Luffy and Arlong Park put in the same situation would have acted differently. I think that he is the same person, but I think learning that bit about himself, him learning that bit about Usopp, it's still development and it's still moving forward. But whether or not he changes is not the point of discussion, in my opinion. You see what I'm saying? I've been thinking about this in my own writing. That's why I'm thinking about it. Is like, what is character development?
Yeah.
Is it just development if they change, or is it development if we see more of them in a different way, or if they're exposed to different situations?
I see what you mean, but I feel like this like Luffy doing that, like maybe he would have always done the same thing, but still he'd never had to do it before.
Yeah.
So from now on, he now did that, even if he would have done, no matter what point it was at, if the outcome would have been the same, but now he's a different person because of the fact that he was put in that situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
he'll still mostly be the same, I think, but there was like having to kick someone of your crew versus after you had to do that. And
yeah.
That's a different thing.
And that's I guess where the difference really solidifies between the two things I was talking about, is if that decision and that confrontation alters the way not only he interacts with Usopp, but the way that he is a captain. Like, is he going to be more hard ass or less confront? Is it going to be less difficult to like put his foot down, and he's going to be more authoritative? I don't think that's the case, because that's just not the vibe of the show, right? So that's what I mean, is it's like, it kind of goes back to, it's what I'm saying right now is a better way of saying what I've been trying to get at and what I've been thinking about since the start of One Piece, and really since watching like Haikyuu, is it's like main character like Gon, Hinata, Luffy, Goku, or a character like Naruto. There's a difference. There's similarities, obviously, but like the depends on the type of story. Whether it's the hero who's just taking too long to come and then he comes and saves the day, or the hero. I mean, Naruto does it. Anyway, that's not the right way of framing it. A character that grows exponentially and that's the focus, or a character that is like the heart and then
they're on their own journey.
Yeah, and they grow in a different way, but it's more that like they're being exposed to different things. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I know what you're saying. Yeah, it's like
it's a different approach.
Still growing, but like Luffy growing into a different person is not the focus of the story.
Exactly.
So
but that doesn't mean it won't happen.
That doesn't mean it won't happen.
It doesn't mean he won't develop, but like.
But it's not like the world revolves around Luffy and everyone else is just there in order to facilitate Luffy growing into a better captain. That's not the story,
Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense. It's kind of, that's why I mean, like, it's like the Robin thing where it's off the question. It's like the answer to the question is, I like the decision. I like the way that all played out. As far as just like a watcher of a scene, I think that's cool. As somebody who's trying to study the writing, it just raises an interesting question about designing a hero and about an approach a story can have to character development, I guess. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I've been thinking about lately.
Yeah, and well, let's wrap it up with one final question from Super Novice, who asked, what character that has been mentioned or seen briefly but not shown extensively are you looking forward to seeing the most? Examples, Whitebeard and Dragon, etc.
Dragon to me is super interesting, but I don't know if like...
You don't know if you're dying to see more of him?
I am, but I don't know if I'm more dying to see more of him than I am of... Like, it's between him and Shanks, just because Shanks is really cool, but I feel like Dragon has a lot more lore to offer me.
I feel like, yeah, if we know more about Dragon, things are really going to click into place.
Yeah.
Or
he seems like a real missing piece type character. And in the similar way that Shanks has so far. Yeah. But Shanks is just cool as shit. Yeah. So I want to see more of Shanks.
I just want to see more of Shanks just to see more of him.
I want to
cool.
you know what I really want? I want to hear more of I want to see more of Mihawk. Like, I'm turning into an actual shonen fan where I'm just like, I want to see Mihawk's backstory. I don't know if I actually do, but like, I feel like there's so much interesting shit in his back. I want to see Mihawk in somebody else's backstory is what I want. And then for that to be told to us.
So you want to see Shanks
and Mihawk backstory. Yeah. But I don't know if I want like that's the thing is I don't want it to be I don't want it to be just seen. Like I don't want to just see that, you know what I mean? Because I've talk about backstory all the time. It's not a replacement for a story. It's a supplementary material that aids an actual story. So backstory is the candy, and world building. They're the candy of storytelling, but they're not the meal. So like, I want to see it really bad, which is a good feeling to have, but that doesn't mean I actually want to see it. I want my inner child wants nothing more than to just gorge on all this shit. But I know that the story is going somewhere and all that is aiding the story. So I want to see the actual story, but I really, really want to see Shanks and Mihawk and what their deal was. I want to see their like old duel. Like what was their time that Shanks finally defeated Mihawk, the best swordsman in the world, in a sword duel. You know? I
want to see Shanks, definitely. I also just want to see more Kobe in his journey.
Oh yeah, Kobe.
Kobe's just so like I hope that when the live action continues, they continue. I mean, maybe they won't, but like I just want to see Kobe because Kobe is just like such a great character that it's like disconnected but connected enough, you know. And I want to see his journey and how he grows. Yeah.
W.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for watching our super long podcast.
This might 4-hour long podcast.
Yeah, this might be the longest one we've done.
Well, it's the longest saga, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry that my voice was also like.
We waited really long as long as we
could, but somehow I still sound like I'm dying. So I'm sorry that you had to listen to this for 4 hours.
But I think this, honestly, I genuinely think this is like our best podcast yet. I think like as far as maybe there's a better one for another one. This might be one of our like top 3.
Ones are probably, some of them might be better than this, but this is I think the best like One Piece one maybe.
This is definitely the best One Piece one. I'm actually really happy with how this turned out. I think we covered like a lot of ground. I think we covered everything. Is there anything we didn't talk about? I don't think we missed anything.
I don't think so. Yeah. Also, again, sorry if we didn't get to your question. We tried to pick like a bunch, but a lot of people asked similar things. So.
And it's funny, actually, one last thing about the questions. It's like I included a thing in the post that was like, please don't do leading questions or ask about things, about our expectations of things that we haven't seen. And that was a big deal because like last one, everyone was like, there were so many way cooler questions. We had like 200 comments or something. There were so many way cooler questions that you didn't get to. It's like, yeah, because they're all questions about like devil fruits and characters that aren't even here right now, or like about things that we don't know about. So all we can do is like, yeah, devil fruits are cool, I guess. You know, so like this time I limited it. I tried to help everybody limit their questions just to things that we've seen. And
I think that there's a lot of really good
And I think
questions.
It brought out people like to focus just on that rather than be like, what do you think about Ace and Blackbeard? What's going on with that? Aren't you excited about that? It's like, yeah, of course I am. But like, this isn't a review of something we haven't seen yet or just about predictions. It's like, this is a review.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, I think that the questions were awesome. Thank you guys so much. And I think that we killed it this time. I think this was a really great podcast. So if you guys agree and you made it this far, watch it again. Put it on in the background and leave a like, please, and comment something. Just the word something.
Yeah. Comment something, and then we'll know that you made it to the end.
Dub.
Bye-bye.